Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, July 10th, 2023. This is a workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach, live at the City Hall, second floor Commissioners Room. Thank you for being here. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock a.m. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Stranowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Bunky Markert.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills. We have a full complement and are able to formally have a quorum and conduct business today. I'd also like to introduce the staff that's here running the meeting, helping to run the meeting. City Secretary Ann Womack, City Manager Lawrence Christian, Glenn Mandalis is excused today, Chief Keith Banks, Public Works Director Kevin Williams, raise your hand there. Lynn Cohen, Communications Specialist. Diamond, I'm sorry I don't know your name. She's an intern with us. Welcome, Diamond. And future Commissioner or Commissioner-elect Don Preston, I wanted to recognize also. Glad you all can be here. So I'd like to thank everybody that's here in person. Typically, when we get to certain agenda topics, we'll call on you for offering feedback as you like. Also want to thank all those that are watching virtually. And I want to remind everybody that support documents, those are documents that support individual agenda items when they are ready in advance of a meeting, are embedded into the agenda. So go to cityofrehoboth.com. Look for the legislative portal on the right side of the home page, and then look for the meeting date, and you should be able to click on and get all the documents that we have up there and are able to see what we're working from. With that, we're going to move right to a presentation of a proclamation recognizing UV Safety Awareness Month. Patrick, you join me up front. This is a proclamation for UV Safety Awareness Month, July 2023. Whereas ultraviolet or UV light is an invisible type of radiation that comes from the sun, tanning beds, and sun lamps, UV rays can damage skin cells and cause eye and skin cancers. And whereas the aim of UV Safety Awareness Month is to spread awareness about how important it is to protect eyes and skin from the side effects of UV rays, and to remind all this month the connection between unprotected exposure to UV light and cancers that occur in the eyes, lips, and the skin. And whereas people who get too much UV light exposure can also develop a weakened immune system, causing their bodies to have a harder time fighting off infections. And whereas there are ways individuals can help minimize their risk, including stay in the shade as much as possible under an umbrella, tree, or other shelter. Use sunscreen and wear protective clothing when you're outside. Sunscreen with SPF of 30 or higher should be applied in a thick layer on all exposed skin. Wear a hat that has a brim that shades your eyes, face, ears, and back of your neck. Wear sunglasses to protect your eyes from UV rays and protect the skin around your eyes. Whereas through learning about how to prevent exposure to UV light, an important opportunity exists to unite the citizens and visitors to Rehoboth Beach to prevent premature aging, skin cancer, cataracts, and other health concerns. Now, therefore, we, Mayor Stan Mills and Board Vice President Patrick Gossett, do hereby proclaim June 2023 as UV Safety Awareness Month in the city of Rehoboth Beach, and we urge all citizens and visitors to educate themselves about the sources of UV light, causes of overexposure, and preventative measures so that we might begin to increase health and wellness in our town. Proclaim this 10th day of July, 2023, signed Stan Mills and Patrick Gossett. And here accompanying us today is Police Chief Keith Banks, head of the Beach Patrol building. You want to say anything?
No, I was just going to say thank you. I know I really pushed this issue with putting lotion on to the police officers as well as our Beach Patrol and Park Division. So thank you.
Thank you. Smile for the photo op? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is correspondence. Correspondence is embedded in the agenda when we have received it at appropriate and sufficient time in front of the meeting. One piece of email came in from Bill Cook. It has to do with marijuana facilities. We can address it at the time we get to that topic. It does mention that his address is unknown, and he is a resident of Rehoboth proper. He lives on the northwest corner of Norfolk at Bayard. With that, we also received a piece of email having to do with marijuana also from Francis Kelleher, but it was only received yesterday, so not time to embed it in the agenda. We can address that at the time that we take up the topic of marijuana facilities. Francis is a resident of the town. With that, we'll go to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of highlights from this past week. First and foremost, I kind of want to say thank you to all the agencies who helped us to pull off a spectacular fireworks event on July 2nd. And it would have been possible to achieve this without approximately 170 additional emergency and support services personnel from other municipalities and agencies who were on hand throughout the evening. I'm not going to name all agencies or organizations that provided support because the list would go on forever. But please know how vital and appreciated their support is. City staff was on hand and performed all the major yeoman's duties for coordinating the public safety matters and maintaining the high cleanliness standards of the Rehoboth Beach. To highlight a couple of the agencies, we had 5 fire departments: Rehoboth Beach Fire Department, Indian River, Millsboro, Georgetown, Laurel, and approximately 80 law enforcement personnel, in addition to what our own Rehoboth Beach Police Department provided from Delaware State Police, Dewey Beach, Millsboro, Newcastle County, Wilmington, Georgetown, Seaford, Townsend, Camden, and Clayton. We had Rehoboth Beach Parking, we had DelDOT on hand, Sussex County, and Dart Rose reporting they had 47 buses providing service in town on July 2nd. We expect to have some ridership information from DART by the next Board of Commissioners meeting. And city staff members are meeting later this week to debrief on this year's event for identifying improvements that can be made to set the date for the 2024 fireworks event. Again, this was a monumental effort by staff and coordinating agencies, and I just want to really say thank you for all their hard work. Final replenishment items on the beach replenishment. Construction of the Maryland Avenue 88 dune crossing have been completed. Staff is conducting a final inspection of the crossings and dune fencing with the Army Corps of Engineers Friday. Punch list items include some touch-up for the additional sand at a few crossings, replacement of several individual crossing posts which are bent or damaged. And a reminder, dune plantings will be installed this fall or over the winter sometimes when time permits. Quickly, we have the Rehoboth Beach Patrol Headquarters and Comfort Station. Representatives from over 12 construction companies attended a pre-bid meeting last week for the Rehoboth Beach Patrol and Comfort Station project. We do acknowledge some feedback from some residents with some concerns, and the staff is hard at work addressing some of those concerns. We have additional pre-bid meetings next week. The city will host pre-bid meetings for 2 projects beginning this fall. A meeting for the street paving water main replacement project on Laurel Street and the Scarborough Avenue Extended will take place tomorrow, and later on this week or Wednesday for the Scarborough Avenue Extended. Some great news, the USLA Mid-Atlantic Regional Championships for the 27th year in a row, Rehoboth Beach Patrol is proud to host the U.S. Life Saving Association Mid-Atlantic Regional Championships. About 300 lifeguards from New York to Virginia were participating in a run, swim, rescue event, demonstrating the skills and knowledge necessary to be an ocean lifeguard. Events are fun to watch, and the public is welcome. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner LeGree.
City Manager, when will we know what the final dollar tally is on the beach punishment? I'm assuming the extra cubic yards of sand added to the final cost.
I don't know when we'll find out, but I'll get with the Director of Public Works and we'll see if we can pulse the Corps of Engineers to find out what the additional, because there were bid ad alternates that were brought on for the additional cubic yards. Sometimes they're not as forthcoming, but we will continue to pulse them.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Commissioner Marker, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that I felt really enjoyed the fireworks display this year. I thought the program itself was good and exciting and lengthy. It had a nice length to it, but in particular, the manner in which we're managing the traffic, I think, has improved greatly over the years. And I thought this past one was especially well coordinated and so forth.
Yeah, great kudos to Chief and Lieutenant Riddle. I think most of the traffic was gone by midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, which is City Solicitor's report. As I indicated, he has an excused absence. If we do have any legal matters or questions, we'll certainly keep a list of them so that he can address them in a future meeting. With that, no committee reports were identified, I don't believe, at least for written reports. Does anybody have a short oral thing to give? We're going to pass on that. With that, then, we're going to start with the first item of old business, which is to discuss amending Chapter 224, smoking outdoors, to include restrictions on the use of marijuana. There is a support document. It's up on the screen. And with that, if you recall, we do prohibit currently the smoking of tobacco products in certain areas. We also allow smoking of tobacco in certain areas, such as designated on the beach. But now we've got a new law, HB 1, that allows the smoking of marijuana except in public areas. So the city manager is going to take us through the proposal in front of us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll see, there was an ordinance up there. What I asked the city solicitor to do was review current ordinance and add any relevant additions based off of House Bill 1. You're gonna have to scroll down, Mayor. As you can see, we've updated the definitions of marijuana with some minor modifications. Keep going, tobacco product, a little further down, line 54 to 58 was updated. Smoking tobacco product prohibited on 65, and then 73. That's taken directly out of House Bill 1. And keep moving on. And that's all the relevant parts that were updated. And we've also provided House Bill 1 as a support document as well. If you wish to, any dialogue from the commissioners on that one?
So essentially, this brings our code into conformity with state law. It's simply that state law allows smoking of marijuana, but not in public areas. And so that's what we're incorporating into this new law. Seems fairly simple. And one of the reasons we need this is because in fact, we've gotten some correspondence not suggesting we disfavor allowing marijuana smoking in the designated smoking areas on the beach. So this eliminates that possibility. So is there any comments before we go to the public? Commissioner LeGree.
And it eliminates smoking areas around public buildings,
Around what?
around this building or any other public building. Yes, I thought
I don't believe it does.
so people can stand out front and smoke marijuana.
No. Marijuana is prohibited in public places, but it does not prohibit regular smoking or vaping in public places, only in designated areas.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. I just don't want it to be around kids.
You cannot, the ordinance that we're moving, or we're proposing, prohibits marijuana in all public places or places leading to public areas.
Lawrence, the line 75 says marijuana shall be prohibited, smoking of marijuana shall be prohibited at all times in all outdoor public spaces. It doesn't mention indoor. Is that covered by the state law? I believe it.
Indoor public
I
places.
I don't want any loops.
Indoor public places are similar to convention center, and we have already got indoor restrictions for those as well.
Well, can a hotel have a smoking lounge?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that one.
Because that is something that does come up. That hotels will offer smoking lounges, and then, so that, it's probably a question for Glenn. I have two other minor things that may also need legal review, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I know a number of the recreational marijuana outlets in other states sell non-tobacco smoking products. There's CBD and there's hemp. There's derivatives of marijuana, but I think we need to spell that out because I do know that they come in flavors. And having done some work in Colorado, it's another skirt around. So if you can smoke hemp or you can smoke CBD, it's not tobacco. And then you get into the argument of, well, how much marijuana is in it or not in it, THC and that sort of thing. So I would at least call out or add or think about including CBD, smoking products, and hemp. I don't know if anyone else agrees.
Our definition should cover that. I think it does. All parts, whether growing or not, seeds thereof, resin extracted from any part of the plant and every compound manufacturer, salt derivative.
It's seeds or resin, yeah.
We'll still run that by.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I bought a pack of CBD hempettes, I'd say they're not cigarettes and it's not marijuana. You know, it's just, I know it's a fine line. I'm just saying if we're going to go this far with saying
Yeah.
no smoking,
Yeah.
we might as well include everything.
Yeah.
And again, referring back, agree with Commissioner Bennett here, that in HB 1, actually, it calls out that in definitions that marijuana does not include any of the following, and it talks specifically about the mature stalks of plant fiber products of the stalks, products approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and industrial hemp as defined in 2801 of Title III. So, I mean, they call it out as exceptions that are not included in marijuana. So I don't know whether we need to include language referring back to HB 1, or so we're all defining the same thing in that regards. I also had another question, but maybe, and Glenn, if you read in the synopsis, the last sentence, lines 10405, it says, "This ordinance also removes the requirement that signs prohibiting smoking must be visible to enforce the ordinance." Maybe I'm just overlooking, but I don't see that deletion in this at all, or is that elsewhere in the code that we're deleting?
For the no smoking signs?
Correct.
The House Bill ones, there was a conflict, and I called Glenn on this one. If it prohibits it, if the signs are out. And so if we remove that part, we're just flat prohibiting marijuana and the smoking thereof within the city limits of Rehoboth Beach. Whether marked or unmarked, this is the code.
Okay, but where I'm looking for is is the posting of the sign of no smoking listed elsewhere in the code, because I don't see it deleted in the document that we're looking at in front of us.
Is what's in front of us the code in entirety?
No, it's not in
Yeah,
entirety.
okay.
Because
that may be it.
somewhere in the code, it says there must be a sign. Do you recall, Chief, there must be a sign in order to, for us to be able to cite a violation?
So if we move forward with this and vote it part, would that in taking down all of the no smoking signs?
The only no smoking signs we have right now are in or designated smoking areas.
Right.
I don't believe we have any that are no smoking signs. Do you know? Because I'm not tracking any.
Right at the entrance, I think.
Yeah, at the entrance to the beach.
Yes, I was going to say at the entrance that's on the beach crossings, there's a sign on the back of that, just a small little one sitting there saying no smoking area.
That's right. You pointed that out the other day.
Yes,
Okay.
but those are the only ones I'm aware of.
So just as follow-through determination as to whether we need to remove those signs, which I don't think would be wise because it's reminding people, but add the phrase marijuana on there so that it's enforced or making people knowledgeable that it is prohibited.
Yeah, when I spoke with the solicitor on this one, it seemed to call out unless we specifically mark signs, calling out marijuana smoking is prohibited,
Right.
that it would not be prohibited. And he said, yep, that probably is a good catch. Let's go ahead and take that out, as language out, so we can, the code regulates the act.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Chief. Any members of the public like to comment on marijuana? Nope, thank you very much. Well, we'll pose those questions to Glenn. And as far as timeline, since we have questions, it's not ready to vote on at the July meeting, so we'll put this back on the August meeting if that's all right. All
So,
right.
Mayor, that's perfectly fine with me. What happens in the meantime?
We are still covered by the state law. So that has not been circumvented. All we're doing is making sure that the city of Rehoboth Beach has a law in place. Should the
Okay.
state change their law, we're just putting items in place to make sure we are covered.
So I just want to be clear, from a practical standpoint, anybody coming to visit or whatever, we are currently covered while we're aligning this specifically. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to our next item of business, which is our first item of new business to discuss establishing regulations on the operation of marijuana in the following capacities: cultivation facilities, manufacturing facilities, testing facilities, retail stores, and then as well as discussing governing the time, place, manner, and number of marijuana establishment operations, if any, including civil penalties for violation of an ordinance or regulations governing the time, place, manner that a marijuana establishment may operate. Lawrence, you've, I think, taken the lead on this. There is no support document. This is all for oral discussion at this point.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What before you is just the language that has been pulled apart from the major House Bill 1, really to identify, trying to get consensus which direction that we want to move forward. The city solicitor has provided some input on this one. Other communities have enacted complete bans on cultivation, operation, manufacturing facilities. I believe our closest neighbor would be Dewey Beach, that has enacted that as an ordinance, completely not allowing it within the city limits. So really, as you see it broken down on the agenda, want to call each one out to try and get some specific guidance on direction of where we think we want to go.
Well, I want to go back real quick. I don't want to read the whole thing. The support document from Bill Cook, corner of Norfolk and Bayard. He's familiar with laws in the states of Oregon and Colorado, and he agrees that legalization causes a lot of problems for communities. They've seen them up close for these reasons. As a Rehoboth homeowner and seasonal resident, I strongly urge the commission not to allow marijuana-related businesses within the city limits. Rehoboth has plenty of problems to deal with already, no need to add more. Such businesses will likely pop up outside city limits along Route 1, so be it, but keep them out of Rehoboth proper. And then we had Francis Kelleher write a letter. Tony, would you be able to give a synopsis of Francis's letter? It's just that her letter had to do with marijuana and
Yes, it was
the
very brief.
deleterious effects of.
Yes, yes, plus she mentioned the AMA position that the jury is really still out on recommending any such activities.
So I guess we need to get some opinions, and then we can go to the public and get opinions on the first four bullets having to do with, do we want to establish regulations or even prohibit cultivation facilities, number one, number two, manufacturing facilities, number three, testing facilities, number four, retail stores, and of course, depending upon the outcome of our disposition there, that means we either go to the next bullet or we don't. So I'd like to open it up to the commissioners first.
Mayor, in thinking about this over the weekend and talking to some neighbors, they were pretty adamant that they did not see, nor did I see, any compelling case that has been made to have these types of facilities and cultivation or whatever category could be added to this list. So they came at it almost from the opposite, not why we should have it, but they came at it from why we should have it, and no case has been made that would be a good course of action for the city of Rehoboth Beach. They thought it was not in character with our city, our values that we have here, and so they were pretty cut and dried about it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
The
Commissioner Legree?
the CDC is just about as, in fact, I think they're more aggressive against the use of marijuana than even the AMA. The AMA said we're still looking for reasons to have it, that it's beneficial or that it's not deleterious, whereas the CDC just lists all the problems, and it has a big section on teens, which is where my concern is. And yeah, I'm with Tony and the AMA and the CDC and every other medical authority.
I have a rhetorical question. Would we consider banning alcohol and tobacco in town?
Would love to, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
When we proposed the no smoking laws, there were a good number that wanted to just ban it entirely on public sidewalks and elsewhere, and we never
Selling
really
it.
entertained it. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with Commissioner Sharp that there may not be a compelling reason, but I also think we need to have a reason as to why we don't do it if we allow other vices, per se.
Well, and those would have been great questions to ask, 50, 60 years ago, if we really did want to have, as you say, vices, in our city. And that horse is just so far out of the barn at the moment. But I take your point that if I heard a very solid case of why we should have this and how it would align with our city and our brand, I'd be open to listening at a minimum. But I have not heard anything, not seen anything, not seen any groundswell from our residents, so.
Well, I'm not a smoker or a toker, and I'm one of those that believes that it's not a good thing to allow, but we're in a position here where the state not only allows smoking and possession of certain quantities and smoking in public areas, but they also allow the dispensaries. So they are legal entities, and yet I am against them in the town for the same reason articulated in some of the proposals by the Dewey Beach folks. The Dewey Beach folks don't want to have any of these facilities in their town. I would not want them to be able to say, oh, just go a quarter mile north to Rehoboth Beach and they'll take care of your needs.
Raise
I'm just
parking to $10 an hour, then we'll be all set.
outside
Dispensary.
outside the dispensary. So I would not be in favor of any of these four bulleted items there.
I concur with that. I sort of talk about reading the room in that regards. Ocean City has banned it, the manufacturer. Dewey Beach has Dewey Beach, and Fenwick have all. So it's like, if we're sort of home free, we're the only one that's going to allow this. If we were to, all of that would come our direction. So again, I think following, as we did with smoking of other communities that stop smoking on the beaches and what have you, I think it would be just to stay in line with other communities so that we're not ground zero for manufacturing or cultivating, testing, or retail stores within the city limits. That would be my opinion. And just to go back to your comment, Commissioner Bennett, about banning alcohol or what have you, I think there's a slight bit of difference in that regards with alcohol is in, except for liquor stores, which we do have a number in town, the service of alcohol is maintained or monitored by bartenders and waiters and waitresses, and they go through specific state training that provides over-serving in how to manage individuals like that. If we're just have a retail store, it's out the door, and there's sort of no, I mean, it's comparable to takeout liquor, but there is some sense of control when it's being served in an establishment. So I don't think we would ban alcohol or but this is talking about the manufacturer, so we do have one beer production in town, but that's the only one.
Anybody else up here?
I just have one
Bonky?
comment that, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with what you all have said. The idea is, I mean, obviously, this is a new, a change, and I think it's yet to be sort of determined, what that really means in terms of how people behave in general in a city and so forth. But I think one of the things to me is like, obviously give me a compelling reason. And right now I can't think of one. Of course, there may very well be compelling reasons or whatever, but I don't see, I think it would be interesting to know from Main Street, the business community, as to how they feel in terms of how this is going to affect the existing businesses, the restaurants and so forth and so on. I personally just don't see it as right now as a driver for, what could improve the city. As so that I sort of have a wait and see attitude. And then the other issue is, let's just say we have dispensaries and so forth. Does that mean, or would the experience of that be that people are going to come into town, buy what they're going to buy, and leave? I don't see how that action is going to affect other things other than maybe they want to sit on the beach for a while or something like that. But the idea that we have done many things to try to reduce the influx of people bringing vehicles into town to come here and so forth and so on, that I would think that if the dispensaries might very well drive people to come in, buy and leave, and I don't think we need that. That would be, to me, better served by an establishment out on Route 1 or some other place, so.
Very good. Anybody else up here?
I
Commissioner Szymanski?
related to Commissioner Bennett's comments earlier about CBD and hemp, I think something I would pose to Glenn is if we were to ban retail stores, I think we already have some retail stores that are selling CBD and hemp, and is there a conflict there, and how do we incorporate that into such an ordinance?
Yeah, I meant the smoking products, just not the tinctures or the liquids or the edibles or any of that stuff, just the smoking products. That was what I was thinking regarding hemp and CBD.
But if we're going to define marijuana as including some of those things, or maybe we don't, I think we just need to be careful about how it's worded and what's included and what's not. considering we already have existing businesses.
Yes. All right. So are we talking the prohibition or the regulation? I think that's before we go down this road, for the cultivation, the manufacturing, the testing, and the retailing, are we talking a prohibition or a regulation? So that we can make sure the city solicitor knows which direction to start traveling.
Can you explain the difference? I'm looking toward an ordinance.
An ordinance that would prohibit the cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and retail space of marijuana, or a regulation that would dictate the application, the areas, the time, the location, the zoning ordinance, or zoning designation of a cultivation facility, manufacturing facility, testing facility, or a retail facility.
I think the easiest, cleanest is to create an ordinance.
To,
But an
Prohibit.
ordinance to prohibit.
Prohibit. or
I
an
think the
ordinance to
consensus
regulate.
here is unless someone provides compelling evidence in the near future, it's a prohibition.
Prohibition.
Agree.
So let's go to the members of the public. If there's anybody here who would like to speak one way or another on the marijuana topic? Okay, go ahead. We need to make sure that microphone's on. Ann will come up and turn it on. Not yet. She'll turn it on. And if you would, give your name and relationship to the city, please.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name's Stephen Provost. I'm a resident of Rehoboth Beach. I live right above my store, Scooby CBD Boutique, just across the street here. I just would like to say, I do think the verbiage is going to be very important with businesses that we do have in town, with the regulations that the state has already done. This isn't really, I don't think, a debate whether, marijuana is good or bad. This is the state has approved it. We're going to have it. Much of marijuana isn't the smoking of it. I see we're really going forward with how we're going to regulate the smoking of it, but there's over 50% of the products that aren't smoking. So, and it is considered a lot of people's medicine. So, are we just going to ban somebody who has a tincture that could be THC tincture from being out and about on THC? So it's a lot to go with. We are known as a retail town, so I do kind of think that we should separate the bill from being just retail manufacturing. It's kind of lumping a big old industry all into one. Maybe we could separate and look at, hey, possibly doing retail with regulations like the liquor stores, that we could see it as, we don't want tons of dispensaries in the town of Rehoboth, but maybe a couple with a radius where it is regulated. There's a very strict application process for anybody who is going to do a dispensary. So it's not anybody just going to be able to open up a store in the first place. There's just 30 licenses that they're going to allow for retail, for say. And then, so if somebody does get that, should we allow them here? Because it could be a good source where it is a subject matter expert who can educate. Say, Scooby's across the street had it. We have the police department right here. We can keep an eye on everything, but it's also would really be a source of education. So somebody who would come, hey, here's some products, here are the city rules. It just would be a good point of like education for the public and the consumers, because it's going to be hard to do a prohibition, say, from something that it's going to be so hard to regulate besides the smelling of somebody smoking it. So there's just, I think, a lot to go with it. I've been 5 years in business now. There is a very respectable way of going about this and seeing it as medicine for people, not just comparing it. So with alcohol, for say, we want to compare, so Dewey, big part of why they denied it was because they said they had their hands full with their nightlife there, which we all know Dewey gets crazy with the alcohol and everything. Maybe they should kind of refine that and how many liquor stores and everything's down there. What this is so we have the way to regulate a product and then people who do something. I don't think it's a well-known thing that the state of Delaware is going to allow something that we're like is people are just doing it and going crazy out there making bad decisions. You know, it is altering. There is a lot of education behind it. It is a medicine, but we also could go on the same route of, hey, this is Rehoboth. Leave your pain medicine at home because we're not allowing you to have your pain medicine here, is another way of thinking about it also. This is the state that is allowing it. You know, there's a lot of different arguments, but I don't think we should kind of separate the retail side, the growing. Of course, well, there's not much land we have here. We don't want fields of marijuana like going up. So let's kind of separate the bill, break it down into more manageable categories. And then, you know, as far as the argument of whether it's, you know, from the years past of that it's horrible towards the direction that, I mean, clearly, if we look around us, everything is changing. Rehoboth is very progressive. And I don't really think, you know, besides me being a little invested in it myself with my livelihood, but I think we're going in a direction people are seeing it as differently than just the devil's grass and like that it's evil. But that's just some points I just would like to bring up. And then just as far as the verbiage, it very well, something that we decide here, you know, 5 years, good business, good reputation, tons of the community, city residents of Rehoboth, everything as my customers. You know, if we verbiage something now, something for somebody's pain, anxiety, you know, we might be shutting down a couple businesses also with that. So that's just kind of what I wanted to kind of bring up to the commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen. Remind us where your place is. You're kind of diagonal.
216 Rehoboth Avenue, so just directly across the street, the yellow building there, right next to Pliables.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else, a member from the public like to speak? For or against? Carol? You can.
So Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. First, I'd like to say, remember Chamber's mission. So this is a difficult one. Promote business, tourism, and civic responsibility. That's it. As far as marijuana goes, the Chamber officially opposed the legalization of marijuana. We did that at the state level. We didn't win, okay? So now it has found its way to Rehoboth. I listened to this gentleman. We've never had a complaint about the CBC stores, anything like that. But I can tell you that just in this past couple weeks, you know, we run the kiosk during the week. And the gentleman who's down there is smelling marijuana all over the place. He tells them it's no smoking, but with some of these pipes or things, you can kind of put them away so you don't necessarily see a cigarette. And I'm also being told on the first block that they're smelling it. So business, tourism, civic responsibility, this kind of touches all three. And when we did the research on the positive and negative, well, there was both. So if you went to states where they legalized it, there was some positive, but there was also quite a bit of negative. So just keep that mission statement in mind, and you're going to have a tough decision to make.
Thank you, Carol. So now we know why all those monitors down at the information kiosk are smiling all the time, right? Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public like to say anything? David? Diamond? State your name and your relationship to the city, Diamond.
My name is Diamond. I am an intern with the city of Rehoboth. I don't have something long to say, but I just feel as though we should also pay attention to the negatives it will have to the community, whether people are for these places being placed. It might cause some people to feel a little uncomfortable. So I just feel like it should be a way on positive and negatives of the community and whether people are going to want to remain or invite others to come down. So that's all.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? David, come ahead.
Good morning. Dave Diefendorfer, city resident. This is a tough one, like the everyone has said, and I understand his points here. He's made some great points. I just disagree with the marijuana. I'm in the military. Anytime anyone's smoking it, I run the other direction because we get subject to drug testing all the time, and I don't want to be anywhere near around it. And I don't want to smell it on the city streets. If somebody wants to smoke it in their own house, have at it. But I just don't want to see it. People walking down the street, which I've smelled it. People walking down the sidewalks smoking it, and I just think it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So I'll come back up to the table up here. We want to make sure that we give Glenn clear direction. I'm going to ask him to listen to the tape probably. But we have the 4 bullet points here. It seems like we want to steer away from cultivation facilities, right? And if you disagree, then now's the time to speak up. Seems like we are steering away from manufacturing facilities. Seems like we are steering away from testing facilities. And it seems like we are steering away from retail stores where we need to define what exactly is being sold in the store, such that it would prohibit the sale of marijuana, leafy marijuana, I don't know what that stuff's called, but perhaps allow, Tim, some of your other products, the CBC, is that what it's called? CBD. I don't even know this stuff.
No, again, I was just from the smoking ordinance aspect, not from the tinctures or the edibles or any of that stuff. It was just simply the smoking part.
I understand that, but I'm now saying with listening to Stephen, are people amenable to allowing some retail for the CBD?
And maybe you can clarify for me, Mayor. As I was thinking about this and talking to other people, what we have in front of us, I did not think that included other products. I thought what we have in front of us is marijuana. So I'm not inclined to do anything that would interrupt what is already working in Rehoboth. I'm not going to champion that. I would love to see if another commissioner wants to champion eliminating something that seems to be working well in Rehoboth, because I would be very interested in that point of view. But that's not what I thought was our mission today.
Oh, I think that was very articulate.
Oh, okay.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else up here?
I refer everybody back to the CDC. They really lay everything out. They talk about population groups, they talk about ages, they talk about low-income poverty groups. They really go through the problems with THC. And they have lots of medical reasons and lots of medical references and lots of, in fact, they'll refute almost everything Stephen said. And we just need to get knowledge. My problems are strictly medical, but when people say they can smell it on the boardwalk or on the downtown, that's a sign of the slippery slope. And Bill Cook, who's from Colorado and Oregon, has some really great examples. A friend of mine is on the city council in Durango. If you think that marijuana is going to increase tourism, better think another angle. And there are definitely pros and cons, I guess. But the CDC, at the very beginning of the spread on marijuana, it says the use of marijuana is not a ballot decision, it's a medical decision. And their whole, lots of pages is reinforces that. Thanks, everybody. I've had my say.
Thank you. Anybody else?
And I would just like to end with our friend Carol Everhart is very persistent and consistent in telling us to please make things simple and easy to understand. So to me, what's going on currently is the way we've been doing business. Expansion of that, which is our topic for today, would be ill-advised.
Anybody else?
Just for clarification, if I may, the 4 points that we have, or 5 points, 4 points we're speaking of, the last one's the operation of marijuana retail stores. So as we have defined marijuana in this proposed code revision, that again does not prohibit of any of the medications, if you will, CDP, tinctures, anything of that nature. It is the leaf marijuana, basically. So it is the aroma, fragrance of marijuana being smoked or passed around through the air because you're smoking. Is that the understanding?
That's mine.
Okay. And then,
I don't know the scientific difference between all of these different types, so
Right.
I don't know.
well, I guess the point is, and I'm not sure where the agenda language originated, but operation of marijuana cultivation facilities, manufacturing facilities, testing facilities, and retail stores. So is that pulled from HB1 or HB2? So those are defined in the state law.
Yes, that was the synopsis, the summary of the HB2
Right.
that we utilized just as a discussion point for this dialogue right here. Because separating those two, this is why we specifically went and separated those. The smoking really is the outdoor smoking.
Right.
And I think as the gentleman said, that only encompasses up to maybe 50% of the recreational marijuana use across the United States, roughly. This right here, this retail dispensary would, not even a dispensary, the retail would be.
Marijuana retail store.
Yes, because that would encompass both the leafy and everything else. So not just for smoking, but for consumption as well.
So by defining the term marijuana retail store, we would prohibit, that's a discussion or consensus, of, if you will, leaf sale of actual smoking
Or
product.
used in baked good, or whatever type of things that would, but without touching current retail operations that are
Correct.
currently existing within the city of Rehoboth Beach.
Which is interesting in some shared language that other municipalities have used, and it may address a comment from Commissioner Bennett. It says, "No business license shall be issued for any operation of marijuana cultivation facilities, marijuana product manufacturing facilities, marijuana testing facilities, retail marijuana stores, or marijuana smoking lounges within the municipal boundaries of the city." So that brings that also consideration into it. So that may be language that we want to pass along or utilize.
That was provided by the solicitor.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, Patrick, those 4 bullets are on pages 15 and 16 of HB 2, just FYI. With that, thank you very much. We've got direction for Glenn, and can move this forward. So this will next be on the agenda for the August workshop meeting, along with the previous topic.
If I may, on that, just to consider, if we're moving forward in that direction, I think we also then need to look at our licensing applications as to how to define those, because we, through other code revisions that we're working on, notice that the definition of retail store or are not quite clear. So I think we, hand in hand with this, that if we define it as a retail store, if that compares also with our language and other codes, specifically Chapter 120, with regards to definition of licenses and how they're applied. Thank you.
I have one more point of clarification, I guess, regarding retail. So I understand the issue of the smell of it and the outward use of it. But to the point of the gentleman that mentioned, I didn't think about this. So any of the edible products, whether it's a hard candy or it's a gummy or something you could take, would we consider that as part of retail? Because that does not have any smell to it.
I mean, that's is a concern of mine of how we define retail store.
Because if you said you
marijuana-
can open a dispensary, but you can't sell flour, in other words, you can't sell the product that you smoke, but you could sell the edible products.
Do we sell that in town now?
No, I don't believe so.
CBD type products.
Go ahead. Just state your name again, Stephen.
Stephen Provost, city, I would just like to say, like with how my store is able to run and kind of the law you guys can look as you're going through everything. It's the 2018 Farm Bill, which decategorized hemp from marijuana, and they said that, because CBD is just a molecule that's in the plant, and that's, helping with the pain, anxiety, sleep, inflammation. But that's the 2018 Farm Bill is what allowed products to come from, so it's hemp-derived products that I sell, and that's kind of, everything there, which is, different than like the marijuana and everything. And then the leafy, the kind of term that it is, we call it just flower, is like kind of the term for that. But there are many, even there's capsule forms. So, I mean, it could be in a pill, anything with any of these types of products. But, the two that's intrusive, that we kind of seem like that's the main issue is, we're out running, we don't want to smell other people, like, it's the flower, the smoking of it, and then the vaping too. So it's also in little vape devices, which aren't as intrusive, but it's still, you can kind of smell it a little bit. So those are the two, but then so many other products, whether, I mean, now they're making, CBD types and THC type beverages. There's capsules, there's gummies. That's what I was trying to say, just the market, there's so many non-intrusive types of forms of these products that for people. So it's kind of, a lot of non-intrusive types of products out there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else?
Are some of these things covered in our 2011 Medical Marijuana Act? I think we've had that, the medical part of it, for a while. We just need to see what we have and what we haven't had. And I'm with other folks. If I think we've been doing okay with the Medical Marijuana Act. I'm not sure I'll have a problem with any of those substances as they are being prescribed and sold. But I think this new one, the 2023, is a totally different thing. Okay, thank you. I said I lied. Now I've said everything.
I'll give you your name and relationship to the city, please.
Don Preston. I live at 518 Newcastle Street Extended. This has been an interesting discussion, and I apologize for having to step out. But one of the things that occurred to me is this is complicated. I mean, it feels like a bit of in some ways, an emotional discussion. But on a practical level, how is the city prepared to enforce such a prohibition? And how will the city do it? Does the city have the resources to do that? I don't have a view really yet about this topic, but just on a practical level, I know that today we have code enforcement, issues. And this one is a hefty one to layer on top of challenges that we already have. So it's just a curiosity more than anything, and wondering if you all have thought about that. Yeah, that's really it for now.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, to Don's point, I mean, I think to answer your question, it's an easy one because we would not be issuing any business licenses to retail stores that were selling it.
I appreciate that point. It wasn't really my question. My question is about enforcement. You may not issue a business license, but that's not the same as enforcement of a rule.
And I would say that's not any different than today. And yes, we have enforcement issues that our new city manager has been very, very courageous to step up and talk about and try to get our arms around it. So to me, it's not any different than today, and I don't want to do anything as a commissioner that, just like Dewey, they feel like they've got their hands full with certain issues, don't need to take another step in a certain direction. I, as well, believe we have our hands full here in Rehoboth with issues that we would like to improve, and we may steer clear of this.
And just to be clear, what this does is would prohibit a retail store a dispensary opening within the city limits of Rehoboth, as well as the other 3 points, the cultivating, manufacturing, and testing. But it doesn't ban the products within the boundaries of the city limits. Someone can go buy them on Route 1 and bring them back into Rehoboth.
Sure.
You just can't smoke it
Yeah.
in a public space.
Sure.
Doesn't mean you can't have a gummy and walk down the boardwalk. We're not trying to enforce anything like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we're going to move on to the next item of business, which is for Lynn Cohen, the city's communications specialist, to provide an overview of Engagement HQ. That's the city's new public engagement tool.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, Ann, are you able to switch to this computer? Thank you. So I'm excited to be here with you this morning to share some information and an update on our Engagement HQ product. Engagement HQ is a suite of products offered by Granicus. They're a company that provides local governments with things like live streaming video, websites, direct mail services, etc. Engagement HQ is the tool that they have developed that helps provide information to residents and other stakeholders, and also encourages those stakeholders to engage with the community. So Engagement HQ is the name of the product that Granicus has developed, and every community that uses it brands it for its own community. That is, they name the platform, and they use that also in the URL to access the platform. So our platform is called Reach Out Rehoboth. And we currently are working with Granicus to create the homepage and 5 project pages. My goal is by the end of this week to send them all the information they need to create those pages. So, first, why Engagement HQ? And this is a product that we feel directly addresses one of the action items in the city's comprehensive plan. And not only does it directly address that action item, it will help support the city's goals in other action items listed in the CDP and beyond. Let's see, and because the tool is online, it's always available and it's convenient to the users at whatever time they want to use it, wherever they may be. In Rehoboth, we have a lot of property owners who are not here year-round, so they will be able to access Engagement HQ or Reach Out Rehoboth on their schedule. They won't have to attend a meeting at a certain time at City Hall in order to have their voices heard. And then our job will be to listen to those stakeholders. And part of our success will be measured on if we can demonstrate the impact of that community contributions to the decisions made and the programs implemented. So the International Association for Public Participation has a community engagement spectrum, and it's up for you here, that undergirds the philosophy of Engagement HQ. There are 5 levels of public impact. None of them is better than the other. They each have their role. But what will make our use of Reach Out Rehoboth more effective is if we know and understand what our goal is with each project. Are we seeking simply to inform the public about a decision made? Do we want them to offer us feedback, or do we want them to be part of the decision-making? So a couple of examples. There's an implicit promise made at each level of public impact. At informing, we are promising the public we will keep you informed. And examples that might be used would be a fact sheet or a website or a press release, maybe an open house. When you consult with the public, you are telling them that we will listen and acknowledge your concerns. Maybe you talk to the community 1 or 2 times throughout the project. So public comment, focus group, surveys are examples of consulting. When you want your stakeholders involved, you are promising that we will work with you to ensure that your concerns and aspirations are directly reflected in the decisions made. So you're talking with the community regularly at that point. Workshops and polling would be examples of involvement. And collaboration, you're promising that we will look to you for advice and innovation, and will incorporate this in decisions as much as possible. You're asking the community to sit at the table with you. And then finally, in empowering, you are telling the public that we will implement what you decide. So ballots, citizen juries would be examples of that. So a key component of Reach Out Rehoboth will be the information that we, the city, shares with our stakeholders. And Engagement HQ provides several widgets that will help us do that. And for example, the news feed is a way that we can provide updates to the community on a certain project. Who's listening? We can put the photo and contact information for key staff members who are involved with the project and who can respond to questions, excuse me, or feedback. Key dates is like a timeline that is printed on the web page, and you can mark where you are on that timeline. We have documents. Of course, we provide documents through our agendas and our website, but this puts the documents on a certain topic in one place. And then there are FAQs where the answers to frequently asked questions can be posted, and the Follow Project, Follow Project widget allows people to sign up for more information. We may decide that we want to provide a quarterly report on a quarterly update on projects and email that out. But again, as I said, the beauty of Engagement HQ is that it also encourages engagement, and the tools that the platform uses are up for you. And they are on a continuum too, from a more open environment where stakeholders can engage with one another and respond to what has been posted, to a more controlled environment where, well, first to a more mixed environment where maybe they see other people's responses, but they can't directly interact with that response. And then with the surveys, the input is visible only to administrators. So in creating, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We have an agreement with Granicus that they will help us launch with 5 created project pages. And those pages are listed for you here. And so one is the stormwater utility, and we will have an FAQ on that page. We may also at some point decide that we want to do a poll or a survey about how people feel about stormwater utility and where the pain point is in terms of an associated fee. On the traffic and transportation study page, we might post a map and ask people to locate places on the map where they have either a suggestion or it's a pain point for them. Excuse me, I'm gonna grab water. And then we also will have the streetscape. We'll have some of the graphics that folks have, that our consultants have provided. And with the Rehoboth Beach Patrol rebuild, we're going to ask people to share stories from their experience with the Beach Patrol, trying to build that sense of community. The Hot Topics page is a concept that we've developed as a way to quickly access information from stakeholders. Maybe we'll take a suggestion that one of our committees has put forward to the Board of Commissioners and try to get a pulse on what citizens, residents are feeling about that to help inform commissioners. So one of the most important things we feel about setting up the Engagement HQ page is making sure that we understand who is talking with us. And we know that that is important to you as well. So our plan is to keep the registration very simple. There are 3 questions always asked. You have to set up a username, your email address, provide your email address, and create a password for yourself. And registration allows people, the information on the website is available to everyone, but registration allows folks to interact and engage on the website. So up on the screen is a possible draft of the registration question related to people's relationship with the city. And what we might do is if you answer yes to one of the top 3 questions, if you check that box, then perhaps this map would show up and we would ask that you indicate either where you live, you own property, or your business is located in the city. So I know this information is important to you. Thank you, I've got it here. So if you have feedback on this topic, I would look forward to that. And that is where I will end.
I did watch the video on this. I wasn't able to watch the live performance, if you will, but I watched the video. It's very exciting, but also makes me, I really want to see it perform to sell it to me, I guess. Also concerned a little bit about time frame. Are we going to overwhelm, if you're going to be the one to manage it, are we going to overwhelm our communication specialists with it? So there's some concerns, but again, I think I'm excited about seeing it in action and better evaluating it then.
Me too.
I want to go on record that I have been an advocate of this forever, and I have been extraordinarily and annoyingly outspoken about it, that as a commissioner, in the absence of anything coming from committees that have potentially a very small scope of opinions and interactions, this is a pivotal moment, in my opinion, in Rehoboth, where we can completely transform how we engage, especially the top 3 bullets on this page, Lynn. I have a few, as much as a proponent as I am, I have concerns only about the rollout, the man hours that are going to be needed, the staff work, but I always believe that the greater good is being able to have information that can inform our decisions. because I suffer from the malady of being quite concerned that we do not have a mechanism to do that right now. Therefore, we listen to, not that we shouldn't, but we listen to a very narrow scope instead of being able to broaden it to really test the recommendations, test hypotheses, et cetera. So I just think that this is the new way of engaging with Reach Out Rehoboth with all of our constituents, be they businesses or residents or full-time people or property owners or whatever, however we want to slice and dice it. Because the most tantalizing thing to me was in the very, very first demonstration, we can find out exactly the thoughts, understandings, and visions of the folks within the 1 mile square on any subject, any time that we feel it's necessary. So to me, this is long overdue, but I'm glad that now in 2023, with this approach, it's much more sophisticated than it would have been a decade ago or 12 years ago or whatever. So I wish you the greatest success on this, and I hope that as commissioners, I hope, especially those who lead committees, believe or don't believe that the entire community, if they choose, should be the ones who get to test the ideas and the recommendations. So thank you for all the effort that's gone on to this so far, and I know you'll keep plugging away as we get to the topics.
I'd like to spend just 2 minutes on this, the significance of this page here. I know I'm and others for years have questioned some of these polls in local newspapers. And the inability to determine where the respondents are coming from. Do they live inside the city, outside the city, et cetera? And the significance of this is when they register, they actually have to put in and fill out certain boxes that we require. And one such box would be, you live within city limits, yes or no, and maybe you have to give a street address possibly. So that we know where you live. And maybe that also helps us to determine, do you live north of Rehoboth Avenue or south Rehoboth Avenue? Because there are different topics that we want to maybe segregate the respondents. So this is a very exciting part of this program.
Well, and just to add to that, Mayor, we did consider listing every street in the city. It's a lot of streets to list. Also, we wondered, we wanted to be able to know where the information is coming from and yet provide some anonymity to respondents. We didn't want it to be so narrow that they felt like, well, the city wants to know exactly who's saying this instead of being open to what is being said. There are lots of other questions that other communities ask: age range, household income, what topics are you interested in? I think our inclination is to maybe keep it at the required questions and this, knowing that when we create surveys, we also can create demographic questions that may apply specifically to that survey.
This is the specific part of the registration. You would go in and let us know your neighborhood, not your street address, but your neighborhood. So you really can kind of group yourself in an area that would be more considerate for some of your interest. Now, we can do poll surveys and other things that would get much greater granular detail. And we toss this around. There were some good points and bad points for some of the communities. I mean, and all the links that Lynn sent out, you can go back and look at some of their pros and cons. And some of the more fidelity, or some of the communities that had a lot of granularity on addresses, from my perspective, didn't get a lot of the feedback. But some of the ones who said, yep, this is my neighborhood, the residents feel a little more protected in their responses, but they still understand where they live at.
So can you clarify for me, because I really want to continue to be an advocate of this, and this is what it hinges on for me. Can an individual, when they register, based on what they put in, will the system be able to know whether or not they're in our 1 mile square? Or is it really just, I could tell it that I'm in the 1 mile, exactly, the honor system. I'm not interested in a situation that is an honor system. In the first demonstration, I was astounded that we could get it down to the street
Street
level.
level, yes.
So how do we balance
But even that, you're depending on them to report the street.
It's not going to work.
Right. It is the information that the registrant puts in.
We'll upload all of that one and they pick. But there's no way for me to say, you're at 1, 2, 3, 4 Cedar Lane. It's without having everybody in our system and then their email addresses, their phone numbers, without all this background data, I can't tell people that you were to sign up, oh, I'm assigning you to this address.
Well, for the purposes of today, I will just say it's better than what we have now, which is 0.
Yeah.
Right. I think
So,
the beauty of providing the map is that a lot of people will think they live in the city of Rehoboth Beach, but
Yes.
do not.
Yes.
And when they check that question and they look at the map, they'll go, oh, that's not where I live. I live in the Rehoboth area, and go back and hopefully check the appropriate.
great. I'll keep my fingers crossed on this one, that over time,
Yeah. I don't know of a single system that we automatically would register them with their home address. There's nothing out there that has that level of fidelity, because then we're telling people where they live and if they want to sign up for it using our data set.
well, if you think about it, eventually all the systems are going to know that without our even telling them.
Is there,
So they may know it now.
Commissioner Stranowski?
is there, I'm brainstorming here, and forgive me, is there a way that we send out a postcard to every address or property owner we have, that's information we know, with a access code that allows them to register, and then they can choose which, they live in downtown or South Rehoboth or Country Club Estates. And those individuals have a special access code that allow them to pick one of the neighborhoods. And then for the folks that live outside of the city limits or visit, they would have a different registration process.
I'd have to check on that to see if that's possible. I don't know.
I think, and what I think Commissioner Sharp was trying to articulate is, we want to be able to know that when we're listening to people's feedback, that they are indeed residents of Rehoboth Beach, or they own business in Rehoboth Beach.
Well, and I'll go a step further. I'm not trying to articulate it. I am articulating it, that when I need to make decisions and cast a vote that has something to do with property taxes that people are paying, I really don't want to hear from anybody unless you are inside the city of Rehoboth Beach where you pay those taxes. So I know it's a balancing act, and I'm not trying to be critical because I want this to work beautifully. So I'm just hoping that as we start to Commissioner Chernowski's point, as we start to launch, we've given ourselves enough time to brainstorm and make sure we're doing it the right way, because if we stumble when we start, it's going to be even more difficult to get people to adopt this. So I'm not trying to push for, an immediate launch. I want a well-thought-out launch that can get us to as much granular information that we can think we can handle as this moves forward.
The challenge with the access code will be as people move and as property changes hands, then how are you allowing new folks who live in the city, own property in the city, to be involved. The other point I will make is I understand wanting to hear from property owners and residents on certain topics. I believe there will also be topics where you want to know that you're hearing from visitors.
Absolutely, no question. But my point was, if we're talking about something that has to be funded by our taxpayers, those are the people I want to hear from. I don't want that muddled as much as we can, because I accept it's going to be a balancing act, especially as we get started. And surely this concern is not just with our community. So surely the vendor can inform us. They've already been down this road with other communities that have a high level of, we have a high level of confusion. Are you in the city of Rehoboth Beach or not?
Right.
That is a high level problem that we have.
And there are other communities that have, one example is one in Minnesota has a long drop-down menu of neighborhoods.
Great.
So they're kind of doing it in a very similar way.
Great.
Commissioner Markert?
I think this is great Okay, I'm going to start with that first. But the idea, the very first graphic that you showed us with those levels of engagement or whatever it was, the very first one was inform. Right. And I think what Commissioner Sharp has articulated, which is something this is like, something we dreamed of. But we are the ones informing, and we need to inform a specific audience that we need to reach. And the fact that I believe we have core data, I think we have property information, we have people in the voting rolls, we have people that have water bills, we have all this, various means of contact. But we need to make that functional. And the idea that we're not starting with this thing, I mean, it's great that people are going to register, but why are we not backfilling this with the information that we have, and that there's, things that we need to do to edit it, to correct it, and so forth and so on. I think we got to go through that process. But at the very least, I mean, I think, we need an inventory of every address in this town. And that means that you need addresses, and then you need properties, and you need property owners, and they overlap. That we have people that with multiple properties, we have people that have, an address, and we have multiple voters at that address and all that kind of stuff. But we need to sort that out, because to me, this has incredible power for us to do things, and I want to be able to reach, and the other thing is, it's not a megaphone, at least it doesn't sound like it's a megaphone, that we're actually going to want to talk to groups, subgroups, a neighborhood, a street, an area that's affected by a zoning decision, so forth and so on. I mean, obviously this thing has the capacity to be a very powerful tool, but if we don't set it up right, it's going to be on the shelf in about 6 months.
Well, and that was my point about trying to say, I'm not expecting that we launch this without really taking everything into consideration, because my other question that I didn't even bother to answer, because it's really a little bit out of your purview for today and what's on our agenda for today is, and I hate to get into the weeds, but it's the question of how are we going to publicize or advertise that this is an opt-in program, and to get people really excited about engaging in Reach Out.
Well, I'm
because they should understand that this is not the city trying to force you, Commissioner Markert, with, we know your addresses and all that big brother bureaucratic type of approach. It really should be an opt-in. But we have to get people excited about taking that step, and then have a successful experience so that they continue to be engaged for long-term relationship building.
Well, I question that. I mean, simply because I think there's communications that we need to make Whether people want to listen to that communication or opt into receiving it or something like that, I think there has to be situations, certainly with notices about things. The issue that's we're really not talking about is emergency response.
Of
you know,
course.
this would all be, certainly applicable to be able to, as a utility, to do that. But we need to be able to make sure that we have that universe and data of people that we need to reach, and I'm just wondering, are we going to just let this thing sort of happen by people checking on, like enlisting in it? I think it should be the other way around. I think we need to set it up to have our universe established. So.
Well, maybe that's not in our purview for today.
But maybe not, but I mean, that's
Yes.
the goal, and I think we need to establish that as a goal.
We'll finish up here and then go to the members of the public, if you don't mind. Commissioner Bennett?
So what would an unregistered user be?
An unregistered user would be someone who comes to the site and simply wants to read about one of the projects.
But they wouldn't be allowed to vote or anything?
No, most of the tools you can set up, whether you have to be a registered user to use it or not. Our default would be registered
okay.
user, but there might be a survey or a poll sometime where we want to open it up.
Okay, thank you.
Back to the local newspaper poll or something. This is interesting because my thought was that we would have more specificity in who is registering. I see that we're not going to have that, and yet I think it's a much better system than the local newspaper just asking everybody. Right. At least we know. I think at least we know we might have better accuracy.
I think we're mixing up here that by self-reporting within our 1 mile square, and if it's done by neighborhood, we stand a very high probability that we've got people selecting who can actually discern that they are in that 1 mile square.
Yeah, sure.
Is that your understanding
Yeah,
too?
that's
Okay.
fine. Commissioner Legree?
We're going to have folks give us their real name, is that correct?
They will give you a username. So it may be their real name, it may be a name they've made up. That is the name that will appear with their comments, their questions.
So first off, I've discovered that if I give good feedback to the citizens, I get good responses from them. And I think this two-way is a very important part of this Engagement HQ. But I think that it's really important that people have to own what they say. You can't have comments from Francis the Talking Mule because you don't know whether it's any good or not.
Well,
but if it's tied to a name and a real person who you've perhaps called the number, like you know how we do two devices security, they get a number back from the website and it says you have to put 4321567, and then you're in the group.
So Granicus tells us that is why they require a username, so that there is some identification and some personal responsibility for the comments made, the information provided. Now, we can't make someone give us Joe Smith instead of Joe the Mule, but Joe the Mule, those comments show up all over the website and they're attributed to
Joe the Mule.
Yeah. So it is that it's their ID, and there's at least some personal responsibility for the comments made.
Okay. But if Joe the Mule lives in Rehoboth, he's going to have a utility number, account number that he can enter in to make sure that he's real.
I don't know that that's possible. I'm going to look into that.
The other thing is, we have people who live here that don't own property. We have domestic partners, we have, all that kind of stuff. So you really need to be able to, I think you need to at least assign registrants to an address. I think to me, the address or the property, however you want to define that, has got to be fixed. were, determined. And then from there, you add people to the system.
If you don't mind, let's go to the public. Walter, I think you were first, and then Don.
Coming my way.
Good morning, Walter Bringham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. Just a couple simple questions. First of all, Lynn's done a fantastic job of lines in the sand. That's your communication out to the extent that we get what we do, and we're appreciative of that. The map was very well done in your presentation. Are we perceiving that this has started to be formatted, to be implemented?
Yes, we're in process.
Thank you. I remember when the city manager first came in, one of the first things he and maybe Lynn discussed was the other means of communication that you were getting rid of in order to be able to have privacy, because you couldn't even find out who the people were and have the privacy issue. And I remember my respect for him, that he was willing to jump in and to defend the public. I believe in cursory, and keeping this short, that anytime we say Rehoboth, we should say Rehoboth Beach. It is our marker, and it ought to be identifier. So to you that were not here at the time, but many years ago, Mayor Mills, when he was a commissioner, was proposing a police department-based reporting system, very much like the dispatchers would use. So when you called in but hooked to the city, not to the police department, that when you called in with a complaint of any kind, someone took the call, logged it, reported it to the right department, gave you a confirmation, and when they got done, you got a response to what happened, and the reporting party, whoever it was at the time, got a response that it was taken care of. I think this is very welcome. I think it could be very rewarding to the public, to the community, and to the commissioners to know what's happening. I'm not being sarcastic, Mr. City Manager, but it's just like we heard nothing about the traffic study today. And there are certain things that people hear about, but if your report was a half an hour, but this would, especially if it's 24 hours, allow people to go in and see what was happening and things. And I think you have a very good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. Anybody else from Don?
Don Preston, 518 Newcastle Street Extended. I thought your presentation was fantastic. Thank you. It was simple, easy to understand. Commissioner Sharp, your leadership on this is, from my perspective, very much appreciated. Just stepping away from the details of this last part of the discussion, what it strikes me as, this is our founding fathers might be really proud of this, because this is about democracy. And that's what I hear you saying. What I hear all of you saying is you want some way for this to be authenticated. You don't want unreal people giving opinions about things that they shouldn't have opinions about. There must be a way to do that with all the records that exist today. I'll give you just a little example of how this works in another community where I have a second home on Cape Cod. If our neighbor wants to add a trash can to their trash cans, we get a notice. We happened to sell our property there and moved, and within 2 weeks, we got a notice of something that a neighbor wanted to do. Now, how did they do that so quickly? It's a small town. It's smaller than this. They did it with a system like this, and it was authenticated against other records. And as the commissioners there, they don't care to know who's saying what, because no one voice is more important than the next. What they care about is that the people who are speaking have the right to speak. And so that's where the authentication that happens behind the scenes is important, because I don't believe I hear you saying you actually care who the person is. You just want to know that they're real. And that's what I hear you say, Commissioner Legree. There must be a way to do this. It's probably not easy. It probably requires systems to be stacked on top of each other. And it probably costs money, but it can be done because it is being done other places. I think this is an incredible a source of information here. It's an incredible way to engage the community. Just one last thing, the part about sharing information out, in my opinion, shouldn't be an opt-in. It should just be done. Because it's not about getting anything back from folks, it's just asking folks, telling folks that this is happening. And that could be the baseline for the building of the whole system. Now, again, City Manager, I don't know if what I'm saying makes your hair stand up, but it does seem like these things are possible to do. So I applaud the leadership here for moving forward on this very, what I call, democratic process. So thank you.
Thank you, Don. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
this is such an important project that I think we should all work together and make sure we have funding to do whatever we need to do to get this going, because it's probably going to be more expensive than we're thinking right now. But I think we should get behind it and stay behind it and fund it. I'm saying that as an ex-commissioner.
With these new requirements, yes, it will be a lot more expensive than originally anticipated, because everything that I'm hearing right now is we were going to stack layers upon layers of information that was not originally anticipated. If this is a fault, it's probably on mine for not understanding what you were saying. My inclination was always going to be an opt-in. You would sign up for these notifications, and then that would be the whole basis. That's not what I'm hearing now, and that's probably a failure on my part to listen properly. What this is going to do is take everything that we would currently have as far as information, validate it as a required address within the city of Rehoboth Beach, and then identify communications methods and then input that into the system. This isn't launching in 60 days, at all. Other than just as a notification to present to people, but we can get it up and running, but there's not going to be any distribution out to the residents anytime soon.
I feel like I'm hearing two issues, one opt-in and one authentication. My guess is that legally it must be an opt-in. We cannot sign people up for this.
We're going to find that one out.
Yes.
What the
When
state
I
of
add
Delaware.
someone to the lines in the sand list, I have to promise that they've given me permission to add their address. So it's, I think there are some privacy issues. And then authentication, I certainly don't have the technological skills to do that. I don't know whether Granicus does or not. I'll have to look into that.
I would be just thrilled if we could just, maybe for the purposes of today, or decide we need more discussion, if we have a system that can be, it's like a semi-authentication through a neighborhood, that I'm associated with the neighborhood. I'm in Schoolview. So I can check Schoolview, and that's what I think we were talking about initially when we were talking about we can do it by street, but I don't think we were trying to connect last name Sharp to a certain address on a certain street that's in Schoolview.
You're the former, not the latter.
Right. So it was just by some method of weeding out that when we ask things about the city of Rehoboth Beach, we don't get everyone that is confused that even the Postal Service has them as Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, but they are not in the city of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. So for me, I am satisfied if we can do it by neighborhood and have a high level of probability that people can identify their own neighborhood.
So you're fine with the honor system in this format
If it
without it being authenticated?
I am to get, we have 0 now. And Don, you say leadership on my part. I say nothing but persistence, because I've been at this annoyingly for 12 years now. So the more simple, Carol Everhart, the more simple and straightforward that we can make it, that was our original intent. That what digital capacity now exists that could help us do this. So I'm not interested in knowing, for the purposes of this is to give us another piece of information as we make decisions. And to me, it's the game of the majority of people are going to trend to a certain perspective. Yes, you're going to have outliers. In every neighborhood, you're going to have Francis the Mule, right? But Francis the Mule is not going to be 80 or 90% of your feedback, or even 75% of your feedback. Because a lot of people by neighborhood, they have the same concerns, they have the same perspectives. But yes, you've got outliers on both ends of that. So this is just a tool. It's not intended to be an authentication. That's not how it started.
Exactly.
that
I'd be
was-
curious, Granicus may have information about how accurately people identify themselves. I suspect it's not a huge problem. I'm sure that there are a few people who accidentally say, I live in the Pines, and they do not. At the same time, if we get too specific, I'm concerned that we're going to dampen enthusiasm to participate.
And that was my understanding belief moving forward. We would be able to provide that information by neighborhood, streets, cross streets, so people would know, oh, yep, this is my neighborhood, this is where I live, and take the full faith and honest effort to sign up. They are validated because you have to put in an email, which then, to your point, Commissioner Leary, that email is then validated because you have to send it, Granicus has to send an email to it to validate it. That's the communication back and forth. It's not two-factor authentication, but it is authentication. So from that aspect of it, that helps us get the long list of communications tools. We can put things in place to say, yes, this is my neighborhood, this is where I live, this is the identity that we truly have within the city of Rehoboth Beach. I think that was always the intent that I took away. So if I was mistaken, that's on me, that's not on Lynn.
Anybody else up here?
Nevertheless, I think there's a lot of merit in what Bunky said. I think it would be wonderful if you could have everybody ready to go and all they had to do was opt in. And then we'd know that that this was a class 1 authenticity.
I think, let me just maybe re-clarify what I was trying to say. This is great to have like this whole notion of the communication, two-way communication, and ultimately empowering everyone and all that kind of stuff. Believe me, that's great. But you know, if I think we like this as a mundane example, we need to inform our people in the city that have a water bill that there's going to be a change to the water bill. Now, obviously, we can do that through the means that we have now, which is, I don't know how we do it, but you know, we send out letters, or, you know, I mean, some people get letters, some people get emails based on that because it's been set up and so forth. But if we had the facility to do that within this system, I think there's a whole lot of other things we could do in the manner in which we do it. I think there's a lot more efficiencies involved. You know, you may not even have to send a letter in the mail. You know, you could actually just notify them through this or something. So I just think but that's, it isn't like people opt into being able to receive a water bill. we're sending them a water bill. That's what I don't get. So there ought to be a way for us to do some of the mundane things, or they're already established things through the system that I think would have enhancements. And why wouldn't we want to do that? And that, I think, starts with actually something that Walter said, which I have to believe there is sort of an established a credentialed means by which we can establish the addresses in the city. I mean, the fire department uses, they have to know what address to go to a place, so that exists, and it gets updated, and it gets all that kind of stuff. So but that's, ultimately, we need that information, which I believe we have, but it may need to be somewhat nuanced or, modified in order for it to be functional in the system. But we can, as Don said, I think we have the capacity to do that.
Thank you, Bunky.
We've been talking about this since we
Yeah.
did our last budget.
I think it's interesting. We started with weed, and now we're in the weeds.
In the weeds. We approved this in our last budget, right? We talked about HQ
right.
in our last budget. And there have been presentations on what it was intended to do. So if now there is an enhanced expectation, is what I'm hearing. All we need to know are two things. How long is the delay? Well, three things. Is it possible? How long is the delay? And how much more is it going to cost? So we don't need to continue to go in circles and getting nowhere. So I would suggest that if there are enough of us who want to determine how much the enhancements would cost with this concept, that we get that information, we get the same information, what kind of delays are we looking at, and what are the challenges of putting it together? I don't have any idea how our systems work here in the city of Rehoboth Beach. None whatsoever. Somebody does, but I don't. So someone would have to evaluate, can we implement what Commissioner Markert and Legree are talking about at a higher level of confirmation than the original usage for this did not have this component. So.
Right. I'm not sure how this tool is designed. So I hear Commissioner Markert, he's speaking about all the data we have about our residents. That is, we know where they live, we can mail them, but we don't have their email address, and we don't have the right to add them to a program that they haven't said, I want to be part of. So that is a challenge. I also would point out, this is a powerful tool. We're all still learning how it works and what is possible, but it's not a be-all, end-all tool. We have lots of other tools in our disposal, and you always have to think about your audience and your message to determine what tool you're going to use to communicate with folks.
Well, I'm going to repeat what I said an hour ago, and that's that I'm very excited, and yet I really need to see it in action to be able to further evaluate it. I would like to see it be put into action as per idea coming into this meeting, and then expand on it beyond that. Do you want any more direction from the commissioners, Lawrence or Lynn?
Is it possible? How long is the delay? How much is it going to cost for this enhanced procedures? I don't know the answer to any of those questions.
Well, I'm in favor of moving forward as is. I agree with Commissioner Sharp. I'm not overly worried that we're going to get dozens of people that either intentionally or unintentionally picked the wrong neighborhood. I think for the purposes of what we need this to do, this is sufficient. I think the cost, the delay, and the challenges.
Those are questions to be answered.
I already know the answer that I'm not going to like any of the answers to those questions in moving this forward. And I do think that the more you authenticate and complexities you put on it, I think the software people already told you, the more questions you ask, the less response and openness you're going to get from people. So I'm happy moving forward as
Also,
as
Commissioner
is.
Chernesky, I think you had a great suggestion, whether we can provide an authentication code to them or not. We certainly can direct mail our property owners and let them know about this tool and encourage them to sign up, so that we're at least directly speaking to the folks we want to hear from most.
But it will still be an opt-in. You
Right.
sign up for it. I mean, a simple thing like you could do a QR code, you can do a website, you with an authentication.
But we gotta get it up first before we
Yes,
can
I
mail
mean,
that out.
the five components are still starting. We're still, beach patrol, stormwater utility, transportation and parking, streetscapes, hot topics. Those are still in the build process. That's moving forward.
Yep.
So.
All right, Don, you maybe have the last word. Go ahead.
Just one quick question. Don
Here.
Preston, 518 Newcastle Street Extended. Assuming no changes, what are the measures of success?
I think that also is a question of mine is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So how do we prove this is successful? And there's probably tools that can give us those results. I'm very supportive of it, have been from the start. And the granularity, though, I think that we all are kind of hunting for, we could kind of ease into that with these particular topics that we're talking about, that stormwater utility, traffic, Wilmington Avenue, Rehoboth Beach Patrol, that here's the general outreach, this is the concept of the project, this is what's going to happen, we know timing, we know costs, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to know more or want to be involved in more, then you can opt in with your specific questions by identifying either your granularity of where I live. If I live next door to Beach Patrol or I live on the canal, that may have an influence, and that would also provide us with that data of authenticity, if you will, or knowing that this is a individual that lives in the city or their proximity. I don't know a lot about computers in that regards, but I do remember many years ago in college, the old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. So if the data that we're collecting is not that we feel confident in, then we're not going to be able to also feel confident in making those decisions based on that data. So I think some form of granularity overall is neighborhood, inside the city, outside the city, boom. But then as we go through surveys or outreach in that regards, if we can gain that granularity from those respondents. Because again, if you live here in the city, you want to be a part of the city, you've got to make some buy-in also to be a part of, as Don said, democracy in action in that regard. You have that responsibility. If you want to maintain your anonymity, that's fine, but you're not going to be in the full process then. That's where I'm coming from. But I would love to see this go forward.
Those are great ideas.
Does anybody want this to go forward as is and as was originally agreed on?
I do.
I do.
I'm fine with
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
Show of hands. Anybody got a hand? Okay, so there's consensus that for the purposes of the city manager and Lynn, they can continue on and on a parallel track, because we can walk and chew gum at the same time, find out some additional information to answer the questions that I will not repeat all of those. And to Don's, what's going to be the measure of success? I think the first measure of success for me is to get this moving as a result of today, and then get some additional information to inform the commissioners. Because if before I leave being a commissioner, I could look at a subject matter that may be highly of interest, that people just do not know about in our community, that first of all, they would know about it, and second of all, we could tease out from them what are their basic fundamental impressions of it. We have none of that now.
Right.
So I thought this really, as Lynn presented it back in February or March, was going to be the silver bullet to get us started and to move this forward.
Thank you. I'm excited for the opportunity to continue to move forward. I would agree with you that getting it launched will be the first step, and then other measures of the success may relate to how many folks we have signed up to be part of it, how many people are engaging, and then ultimately, are you feeling like you're getting the information you need to make better decisions?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for everybody for input, commissioners and the public. With that, I'd like to exercise the chair's prerogative, and because we've got an outside attorney here to help us with the personnel code, I would like to skip over and put the proposed amendments to Chapter 146 Personnel in front of your discussion, Ed, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, that
All
makes
right,
sense.
thank you. So I'm going to turn it over. We do have a Personnel Committee. Patrick's the chair of the Personnel Committee. Other members of the Personnel Committee are Commissioner Sharp, Commissioner Sharnowski,
That's it.
and Commissioner Gossett. And so they are most familiar with this because they've helped vet it. But I think it was initiated by city manager. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Mayor. After coming on board to the city, we identified some changes that were currently worked on by interim assistant city manager Evan Miller and then our HR manager Gene. They've taken it all the way to fruition, briefed the personnel committee, and that's what we're here to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Gossett, unless he has any opening comments before we pass it off to the solicitor.
We just introduced your committee and
Thank you. I had another call to take care of there. But yeah, this was, as you've introduced, the Personnel Committee reviewed these proposed changes that were brought forth by the city manager, reviewed and discussed with the Employee Committee, and then Mr. McMacken brought those into draft form to revise our city code and incorporate those into the changes that we feel that need to be brought up to federal, state, and laws to conformity, and a few other tweaks, kind of to bring us into the 21st century. So, Jim, if you will.
Commissioner, it's difficult for an attorney to not be wordy. I will make my best efforts. I agree with what's been said thus far. I thank you for your audience today, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and city manager. It's always a pleasure to serve the city. The process this time and now is delightful to work with. There is now a rigorous process in terms of how we are going to address code amendments with regard to personnel. There'll be a draft, it'll go to the Employee Committee, it'll go to the Personnel Committee, and now it is before Mayor and Council now. I will tell you that we have further amendments that are going at the July 20th meeting of the Employee Committee that will be coming back to the Personnel Committee in early to mid-August, and then coming to you all again sometime this fall with regard to changes that we see as being necessitated by recreational marijuana being legal in Delaware. So those have not yet been seen by the Employee Committee or the Personnel Committee, which is why they are not yet before the entirety of the commission. I serve as you will. I can go through each one in general. I can just answer questions you may have. Just for your background, we obviously made everything gender neutral. We cleaned up some provisions that had been problematic in the past with regard to workforce management, and we implemented some best practices with regard to make sure that we are fully compliant with the law, specifically in two regards. With regard to sexual harassment, right? Obviously, that's something we want to make sure that we are protecting our employees from, and also that we are mitigating liability for. And second of all, it came to our attention through the review process that we needed to tighten up some of our overtime rules with regard to the accumulation and use of compensatory time in order to be compliant with the Fair Labor Standards Act. So those are two significant legal changes that we made. There are a number of practical changes that we made with regard to things like anti-nepotism. We decided that it is not a need to provide everybody with a physical examination pre-employment, just the sworn officers.
If you give us a line number, we can go to it on the
Sure.
screen, if it's something significant you'd like to
Sure.
have us pointed out.
Mayor Mills, I'd be happy to. Anti-nepotism was in line 47. And that is generally viewed as a best practice with regard to workforce management. Line 57, we eliminated the need for all employees to have pre-employment physical fitness evaluations. In 64, we've made revisions with regard to drug testing, and additional provisions in that regard are coming. However, in the interim, regardless of the legalization of recreational marijuana, we did need to presently update this with regard to medical marijuana as opposed to recreational marijuana in order to be compliant, in order to accommodate those who have medical marijuana cards who are disabled as a matter of Delaware law. Long-term disability status in 115 was changed to address some workforce management issues. Just to make clear, when somebody no longer is an employee of the city, when they are on long-term disability status, to allow you to fill a position that's otherwise occupied but not being actually filled. However, we don't want it to be draconian, obviously, so those people, if they hopefully return to being able to work, are given priority status, and that is in page 3, line 115. The changes starting around 133 through 161 are to make the city compliant with the Fair Labor Standards Act, which only permits accrual of comp time in certain circumstances. We've got to have a policy like this. There's caps on the amount that can be accrued. There are limitations on our ability as management to preclude comp time from being taken. So now it complies with the law. This was necessitated as a result of the investigation that was going on while we were doing this draft. Now you are compliant. We added in line 170 Juneteenth as a holiday pursuant to state and now federal law. Vacations are in line 181. It just talks about when notice needs to be provided to the supervisor that somebody is going to be taking leave. Section 4625, starting on line 217, makes clear what happens when somebody is eligible for Medicare. We are paying a portion of their health insurance. It can be used as a supplement. We don't pay premiums for Medicare, obviously, but the code provision as written now provides that not only when somebody goes on to Medicare at age 62, but also some people in certain circumstances can go on to Medicare early, and now it accounts for that as well. We added and reorganized those departments that are submitting employees or sending employees to the employee committee to add somebody from each group, and they are all also now alphabetized. We are formalizing the process of the employee committee meeting. In section 281, line 281 throughout, we are expanding the protections afforded to our employees. with regard to sexual harassment and being free therefrom. It's not just employees, it's applicants, it's interns, it's temporary employees. We don't want our residents and contractors being harassed while they are at the city or city property by our employees. Starting in line 320, we have tidied up our policy with regard to the reporting of sexual harassment so that it's a mandate when somebody is sexually harassed that they bring that complaint forward. There are, of course, provisions in code prohibiting retaliation or reprisals against anybody who not only reports harassment, but is a witness or is asked questions about it. They are all protected from harassment. And the remainder, I believe, are gender neutrality-based changes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions by the commissioners? And the employee committee, I'm least familiar about this whole thing, so I'm just throwing this out. For the employee committee, there seems to be wide representation on all the departments, but not for civilian employees of the police department. Is that typically not done, or?
I'm concerned, I don't understand what you're saying, civilian employees of the police department?
Well, we have civilian employees of the police department, correct?
Yes, we have uniform officers, dispatchers, and we have administrative people, or
And-
administrative representatives.
And I guess I didn't see that administrative or civilian employees of the police department had an opportunity to be on that. Is it just normal that they're not?
To my knowledge, there is one administrative assistant, and that is not a uniform officer or that is not a communications, but she still is linked in tight with everybody else. So adding a civilian employee to the police department would be adding one department, making a department by itself and adding that one employee of that one department.
Okay, okay.
She still has the same voice, or that individual still has the same voice in communications.
Okay. Well, I recognize that this must have a nod of approval from the city manager, from the personnel committee. It's got a legal review, so I'm fine with it.
I'm
Are there any,
cut you off.
No.
any comments from the commissioners?
I just, as Chair of the Personnel Committee, I just want to thank Commissioner Shanowski and Commissioner Sharp for input into this, and also legal representation. A lot of the issues that were brought forward just bring us into compliance, and also looking forward so that we can be in compliance in the immediate future and beyond of working towards fair representation for all of our staff members here at the city.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that want to speak on this topic? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commissioners. City manager, are you comfortable with, and the commissioners, are we comfortable with putting this on for a vote, July 21st meeting? Because this is not a zoning issue, so we can go right to a vote. I'm not seeing any negativity.
Comfortable in the process where we stand right now. So I think we're ready for it to move forward.
Okay, we'll put this on for consideration of a vote on our July 21st regular board meeting. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
you, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
With that, we're going to go backwards one step to discuss recommendations by the Environment Committee to ban gas-powered landscape equipment with a phased approach and possible exceptions. Let me bring it up here on the screen first. You'll note that this report that's embedded in the agenda as a support document is dated February 2023. Just honestly, we just did not prioritize it earlier and had plenty on our plates up until now. this has also given us time for the city manager to read this over and be able to report on what possible impacts are on his staff. So at some point, we'll be asking for him to report. So in the meantime, Commissioner Stronowski, do you want to reintroduce this?
Sure. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read significant parts of it. To identify the topic, gas-powered lawn and garden equipment poses significant health hazards to both equipment operators and Rehoboth Beach residents, including the discharge of particulate matter, carbon monoxide, unburned fuel, and ozone. It also contributes to climate change by emitting carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, and generates significant noise pollution, a paramount concern of Rehoboth Beach residents. Part of the noise pollution, gas-powered lawn and garden equipment can produce up to 100 decibels of low-frequency noise. This is about the same as a plane taking off. Exposure to this level of noise can lead to hearing impairments. Pollution and climate change are obvious concerns as well. In this process, the Environment Committee listened to testimony from the city arborist, representatives from at least 4 landscaping companies, and all interested parties who attended the noticed meetings. The committee has reviewed the ordinances of other municipalities, most notably Lewis, Delaware. The Environment Committee has reviewed published information on the impacts of gas-powered landscape equipment from numerous environmental and federal agencies. I'd like to mention that in hearing from, I think we heard from 5 landscape companies. Most of them, one already operates a fully electric landscape service equipment. One has a smaller landscape equipment that didn't see much of an impact. The 2 larger organizations that we spoke to, Spizzato and Sussex Trees, were not opposed to a ban and specifically said that the industry is going in this direction because there are many advantages, including lower energy costs, lower maintenance costs, and lighter equipment. I will say that specifically with tree removal, up to, when it comes to chainsaws, up to 14 inches, the equipment is pretty good and the batteries last a long time. Once you get past 14 inches of a chainsaw, the technology is just not there yet. In addition, riding lawnmowers, the technology is just not there yet, where we feel that is a change to make. Electric landscaping equipment is now widely available with recent battery advancements, and it's more affordable than ever. So the committee recommends that the city of Rehoboth Beach adopt an ordinance banning gas-powered landscape equipment with a phased-in approach. The following suggested language has separate deadlines for city and its contractors, followed by commercial operators, followed by residents and property owners. Within each group, handheld equipment is phased out first, followed by lawnmowers. The only serious opposition the city heard regarding this proposal was from some residents that object to replacing their gas-powered lawnmowers before, one, their lifespan is over and they're ready to be replaced, or they just like them. So the recommendation is that the city of Rehoboth Beach would first start phasing out, and whether it's city employees or its contractor, would phase out handheld gas-powered lawn and garden equipment effective December 31st, 2023, with lawnmowers being December 31st, 2025. Commercial operators, those licensed to be landscapers in the city of Rehoboth Beach, The effective date for handheld would be December 31st, 2024, and lawnmowers would be December 31st, 2026. And for residents and property owners, it would be handheld December 31st, 2025, with December 31st, 2027 for lawnmowers. I will say we didn't get a whole lot of feedback during the Environment Committee meetings. I have since received a lot of feedback from people, and for me, it's been very mixed. I'd say 50-50 from the folks that I've heard from. As stepping aside from chair of the Environment Committee, my big pause is forcing residents to replace equipment that could otherwise still be used. So that is what is before you.
Was the committee unanimous in the decision?
Those
Recommendation?
present, it was unanimous with the exception that I abstained.
Okay.
So the chair of the Environment Committee abstained from bringing this forward to the commissioners. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
I didn't want it
I
to
didn't
be.
ask for an explanation. I just
That-
wanted to make
that
sure I
is-
heard it correctly.
That is true. I didn't want there to be a perceived endorsement of something that I get to dive deeper in the decision-making process.
Well, this is a fascinating approach to me. Mayor, are you ready for the commissioners to speak? Because I just kind of launched in already. I would like to know how many committee members actually voted on this. What was the number of them? And do they or do they not, since this impacts the costs of the city of Rehoboth Beach, do they live inside our square mile? And while you're thinking about that, Mayor, do we have what this would actually cost cost the city? I don't know that we do now, because I have other concerns of how this document says this is a paramount concern for Rehoboth Beach residents, and I want to understand based on what?
Well, I think you have two things there. One, and that's something that Ed can address your last question. Your previous question on what does it cost, maybe we want to pause and turn it over to the city manager let him report on his analysis of what the cost would be to the city, not just financially, but the cost of personnel, equipment.
And as we're talking about this recommendation would be effective December 31, 23. And to me, this would be, if we were to ever go in this direction, this would be a budget item and could never be implemented December 31 of this year. So, City Manager, to you on costs.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. A couple things. Our preliminary analysis did not include, and I say again, did not include any personnel increases or costs. I thought that was a little too preliminary. Based off of initial calculations, this would cost the city right around, to Commissioner Tarnowski's point, right around $250,000 to replace all of the existing gas-powered riding, push mower, handheld equipment. And that's preliminary cost. We would have to go back and really refine some of those numbers. For 3 departments, for water, streets, wastewater mechanics, you're looking around $180,000, $190,000. For the parks, recreation, arborist area, you're talking somewhere around $70,000 plus dollars, and that is a variety of all gas-powered equipment across the entire fleet. That is no training. That is no additional personnel. That is just the raw numbers to replace existing equipment. There would be significant training challenges to incorporate an entire battery-powered fleet. We don't know exactly what the utilization rate is for some of the batteries, charge rate, things of that nature. They sell entire It's a wonderful display here. It's an entire new trailer. They sell it. It's not made yet, so we would be on back order. But it's a wonderful thing to try and do. But I don't believe the technology is caught up with the supply right now. So that's one of the hard parts.
So in the
Small.
quick, I'm sorry, in the quick preliminary scan, then you're talking between 450 and 500,000 to replace equipment?
No, we were right now just for just equipment to equipment, going one from the other. You're talking right around 250,000 plus.
Okay, but then you mentioned Parks and Rec and Water at 75. And
Yes, I went total number, and then I went down by departments.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. So total 250.
Yeah.
But this is $250,000 on first blush.
Just on first place, yes, correct. And to be honest with you, there are things that don't add up. I mean, currently we use backpack blowers with a 270 mile per hour blower. That's the air coming out of them, and the battery packs just can't equal that one. So the technology it's not an apples to apples comparison. And then the life expectancy of those batteries. Now you're talking recharge rates, which again, it's all anecdotal data right now. We don't have a lot to rely back on that one. And that is just our equipment. That is not the contractor, Sposato, which handles a lot of the contractual support for the city for the green spaces. So they would have to transition their entire fleet in accordance with this one. So I'm not against it. It's just, I don't believe the technology is quite caught up to where it needs to be yet, especially coming out of the COVID era. So.
Would any of our contractors have a valid right to say, we have a contract with you that expires in 2 years, and there's nothing in it that says up until that point that we have to change over our equipment?
I have not reviewed the contract, so I don't know what it says or the language in it. I have to review that to have an understanding of if there's a dates associated with it.
But I think the whole point here is that if we're going to enact something like this, then we should be good citizens ourselves, the city, and follow it and everything.
Well, I think there's much more to it than that, Mayor. I appreciate your comment.
Yeah.
But to me, I am still asking the question, how is this the paramount concern? I did some very interesting little focus groups over the weekend, and I reached out to the 5th grade science teacher that will resonate with Commissioner Gossett, Mayor Mills, and myself, that brought her class here when this particular room was almost brand new. So it's been a number of years ago. Approached the commission with the issue of single-use plastics, specifically straws. What we did with that issue was we thanked the 5th grade for coming. We have done nothing with it since. So I'm not understanding from an impact on our community. Single-use plastics, speaking of pollution, are used 365 days of the year. Gas-powered equipment is utilized seasonally to differentiate, first of all, one obvious difference between them. We did not move forward on single-use plastics because there were a number of commissioners who felt it was too onerous on the businesses because we did not want them to have to put in the extra funds, not to mention the city at the time. So I'm just a bit flummoxed and confused as to what we're really trying to solve here. Because if on one hand, we're going to treat one class of businesses, restaurants and anyone else who uses single plastic in our city, all of our commercial businesses, et cetera, unless they've changed over due to their own volition, I'm not understanding why we would go after landscapers who, I have another question on how many business licenses have we issued to independent landscapers, one-man companies, two-man companies, that speaking to the bigger folks, to me, doesn't give us a broad view of what would be the burden on, or what would be the reaction from small independents. So to me, when I spoke to the science teacher, she was very curious as to how we would focus or want to focus on this issue. When she talked about idling of cars, trucks, and those making deliveries, and specifically noted each school day at Rehoboth Elementary, approximately 75 cars, 8 buses idle in front of the school to drop off students for 35 minutes in the morning. They do the same thing in the afternoon. It's a minimum of 100 cars, 16 buses idling for more than 30 minutes each day for each of our 180 school days. So she was flummoxed from a science standpoint, that if we wanted to go after things in our city that have a lot of impact, I'm still confused as to why would this rise to the surface. So maybe, Edward, you can help me.
The other 2 items are one, I think single-use plastic has already been sent over to you all as a priority and recommendations. And an anti-idling policy, the city already has a resolution that discourages it. And the committee is looking at changing that to an ordinance as well. I'm sorry that you want one prioritized over the other, but
No,
this
I'm
committee
not
of
saying that.
volunteers are trying to make
This is
progress where they
this
can.
is a perfect example of what HQ can help us with.
But to answer your first point is climate change, sea level rise is very focused in our comprehensive development plan. And this is a contributing factor to it. So that is why it's a priority of the committee.
Well, it may be a priority of the committee, but we have no way of knowing the answers to some of the questions I think that I'm raising. I'm all for doing things for the environment. I would have much preferred to have seen a package of things for the commissioners to react to, a more holistic view of things that we have done, things that we haven't done, that we could just go ahead and clean up those.
Well, a year and a half ago, they also recommended creating a climate action plan, which still has not been brought before this board, which would be more comprehensive.
Well, that may be so as well. But obviously, I am not in favor of advancing this, especially when we haven't asked our taxpayers, these are not visitors, these are our taxpayers, if they would like to spend $250,000 to do this as in an off budget. I'm not even understanding the cycle here.
Well, it was recommended before the budget was passed, so I think
Back in January, February? Well, that's news to me. But at any rate, I think this is, on its face, this to me is not something that any of the constituents that I spoke to over the weekend wanted to see move forward. I also used, from a noise standpoint, I also called several of my neighbors, one that are 4 houses down from me, one that's on a different street from me. And I said, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be using on my deck my battery-operated blower. And I would like you to let me know if you can hear it at your house. Yes, they can. So I'm not understanding the noise aspect of this, and I haven't even gotten to how is this going to be enforced and who's going to enforce it. I personally have a very difficult time with spending commissioner time on things that I'm unclear how this would be enforced. I mean, we have enforcement problems now. So how did y'all think about enforcement?
I think it was acknowledged that enforcement would be difficult.
Well, you know, why would you bring that here? If enforcement would be difficult, doesn't that go back to the committee to say, well, how would it be solved?
I think that there's no point in wasting a lot of time in every nuance of every detail of something if there's no interest in the commissioners to move it forward.
I have no interest, because I don't have any.
I think that's clear to everyone.
Yeah, it is.
I have interest.
Well, let me, if you don't mind, let's pause. We've got a couple commissioners that would like to give input.
Sure, maybe I'll get some answers to my questions.
And maybe so too. We had Commissioner Bennett and then Commissioner Legree.
I just more of a, I understand the laudable aspect of environment and climate change. One question I had, and I don't know, I did watch the committee on YouTube, but was there discussion, it doesn't happen all the time, but in the event of an emergency, we have a hurricane, we lose power, and we need to clean up the damage, storm damage. What happens when we can't plug things in and use them? Was that ever addressed in terms of how would Public Works then, all of a sudden, we've got to clean up trees, debris, and things where we would use gas-powered, and we can't have them charged up? I know it's maybe...
I believe there was a brief conversation about that early in one of the earlier meetings where I believe I made the statement that the city manager or mayor can make any changes to an ordinance during a state of emergency.
Okay.
And I think the expectation would be that, that stuff is outside of the scope of normal day-to-day.
But if, I agree with that, but if we have eliminated all the gas-powered and we only got electric, there's nothing to declare to go back and use, correct? Unless if we've sold it all off or what have you. Because I don't think, we don't want to, I wouldn't think that we'd want to maintain all the gas-powered in case of emergency as a backup. Again, I'm just, that's.
Yeah, and I know I may be far, but that was just one of the unintended consequences I saw of this. I'm wondering if Lewis has, because they've enacted this, right? Do we know how it's been working there?
I don't.
Okay.
I have the Lewis ordinance here. I don't know the answer to that, but I'd like to read what their ordinance says in a minute. Commissioner Legree?
To answer Commissioner Sharp's comment, what happens in the wintertime? You have hundreds of houses being built, maybe not hundreds, but half of that many on Prospect and Queen. But virtually every one of them comes to work, they pour their gasoline generator full of fuel, and they start it up, and that thing runs all day long until they get ready to go home at night because they're operating their impact drivers and their air hammers and everything, and that happens from the time they lay the foundation almost until the house is finished, which is several months. Now, they don't need to do that. They could have temporary power brought in like I did when I built my house, and a lot of people do. But a lot of these people, just to cut costs, they run those little gasoline generators 8 hours, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I run my gasoline mower, although I bought a high-powered electric lawnmower that can't pull itself out of a hole. But 52 hours a year. Those folks are running these little old dirty gas generators for 40 hours a week. And city manager, don't we have a way to inspect these or to sign off these houses that are being built when we do the foundations? We come in and inspect the foundation. Why don't we inspect for temporary power? It's only a few $100, but it quiets the neighborhood down. And I wish we'd do that. I wish we'd have every house that's being built have temporary power as soon as they get the foundation run.
But that's
I
not
think that's a
covered.
good topic. I think it's a separate topic,
Not
and we
covered.
would need to create an ordinance for that. I don't disagree with you.
I can piggyback straws onto that some way if you'd like to. I just thought of that, and we talked about it this morning. But I think that's what we should do, first of all, is to stop that. It's easy to do, and we can do it, and now I've said too much already. There we go.
I'm gonna give a couple comments, and then I'd like to read what the ordinance is for Lewis. You know, I've received over the years a lot of complaints about noise also. And I've gone all electric blower and mower, and it only takes me 20 minutes to cut my postage stamp yard, so it's pretty quick. But you know, it still makes noise, and it has a different decibel level than the gasoline things. So I understand a lot of the constituents complain about the noise, but for me, when I hear their comment, it's mostly about the time of day that the noise occurred, that they've come down from DC for a weekend, and the darn commercial mowers are on a Saturday, right when they want the quietude. And so it's again, it's more the time frame for that. You know, one thing I heard, Ed, you say is the industry is going this direction. And so it may be that if we wait another 1, 2, 5 years, that it handles itself somewhat. The enforcement was a concern, especially on weekends, you know, because the weekends are the biggest thing, and the biggest hurdle we have is lack of personnel on weekends enforcing these things. So anyhow, what does Lewis have? And this was printed out from their website on July 7th. It's only this long, so it's very short. And basically, it says effective December 31st, 2022. So behind us. Effective on the gasoline-powered landscaping equipment shall not be operated within the city, with the exceptions. Leaf blowers, chainsaws, string trimmers can be used, but only until December 31st, 2025. So they have a little extra window there. However, regardless, it says gasoline-powered lawnmowers are exempt from this subsection. So they don't even address gasoline-powered. They're totally out of it. So all they're regulating now and into 2025 are leaf blowers, chainsaws, and string trimmers, as well as any other machines that are used to maintain lawns and landscaping. So they seem to have a minimalist approach. And it doesn't mention whether it's residential or commercial or commercial vendors. So I don't know how they handle that. I mean, we could certainly, if this were to continue, we could certainly inquire up there, but I'm not sure where we're going with this today. Anybody else up here?
I just had a brief comment. I didn't want to belabor this any more than we had to. To me, the issue, at least with the concerns of the committee, had to do with lawn cutting, and I think the easiest way to deal with this is to reduce the size of lawns, which we have been doing over the course of many years, where we have enormous houses and then we just have a little bit of lawn around the outside if we have that much, or so to me, the idea of the lawn, I mean, it's more of an aesthetic thing. It's some adaptation from what the English thought was like a really wonderful, way to, surround your house with a, or your mansion or your manse with a lawn. But I will say that the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee has certainly promoted the idea of alternates to lawns. And I think I just feel like the city would be much better served with kind of promoting that aspect. A neighbor on my street has basically eliminated her lawn. Over the course of years, my wife has eliminated about half our lawn with more plantings and things like that. I mean, I think that's more the way to go as we transition to non-gas powered. I just wanted to share one detail, getting back in maybe the weeded area. Air-cooled gasoline engines are notoriously inefficient, both in terms of how much power they generate and also the noise and pollution that they create. So there's a reason to kind of want to, at least the EPA has certainly supported eliminating those kind of, because they pollute at a much higher level than other gasoline engines like car engines and things like that. So that's the main reason why the EPA is sort of supporting all that kind of stuff. But if you have to have an alternative to doing this, I just think this is kind of an ill-fated, attempt to do something noble. Where I think the more noble thing was basically just let's create more grain that doesn't need to be cut down on a weekly basis. So, if you follow me.
Outlaw lawns.
Huh?
Want to outlaw lawns.
Yeah, promote. I mean, I think all we can do is to sort of influence public opinion if we can, and say, you don't need to be doing this. You could do it maybe cut it every other week, or you could make it look a little shaggy, or plant something else, and then you don't have any more lawn anymore. So anyway, that's my suggestion.
Would you mind if we went to the public and then come back
Sure,
to Tony and her questions? Any members of the public like to? Dave, if you'd be number 2, and you're number 1. Yeah. Just if you would state your name in relationship to the city.
Hi, I'm Nancy Doyle, and I live at 202 Country Club Drive with my husband, where we telework. And we are part of your new generation of residents that have come in when they realized they were teleworking somewhere else, and they're like, wait, I could telework anywhere. The pandemic put that light bulb on us, and we're happily moved and permanent involved residents here. I love the phrase, Mayor Mills, the postage-sized lawn. We have a very small lawn. And another way of looking at that in my neighborhood in Country Club Estates is that we're all very close to each other. We bought a fairly large house, even though there's just 2 of us, because our upstairs is entirely telework offices. We're very serious about work. We have a mortgage. We earn our living there. I'm on calls. Sometimes they're international. In the middle of the day, when a commercial operator comes and runs a gas-powered, sitting on it motor and a teeny little plot of land that doesn't need that kind of large equipment, it can really disrupt my call. I'll have to move to the phone from the video and move to the middle of the hallway. Noise pollution affects my work. So I'm hearing, not everyone's completely excited about this or haven't heard a lot of complaints from a lot of people. So my point to you here today, and I came here to say this, I have other neighbors who are like me or new. The people at 200 Country Club Drive, Sean teleworks, and he complains about the gas-powered. It's the battery electric is noisy too, but this is noisier. And it's the commercial operators in the middle of our workday, right around the corner in Sandalwood. I hear the same thing from Richard. He teleworks. They're having a problem too. Our houses are very close together. So this is a great solution in the long run, and I agree with you. I'm a daughter of a botanist from Vermont, and I'm working on studying the native plants and turning my lawn around. Right now, by the way, for the record, I use a push mower. I need the exercise. I'm not using gas or electric. But if you look at the nice way you divided this into 3 categories, Commissioner, it seems like B2 for where I live, and I don't think I'm just my only data point in my neighborhood. I've cited other people and names. We'd really like at least you to consider B2 going forward, because that happens in the middle of our workday. Doing something like for commercial operators sooner doesn't cost the city money, and the technology can come on board, and the head of the public works and figure out where to store all that gas-powered stuff for a hurricane. All those other issues don't have to be resolved right away. But for me, this is I know it's about the environment and climate change too, but this is really about noise pollution. So I'm just one data point, and I'm from a small town in Vermont where people get up and talk about their neighborhood and their issue. But I really do think it's extensible. These guys come to it's happening to other people. Just in my block, I'm hearing complaints from other people about it. And so you say time of day, and in particular, you hear complaints about it on the weekend. The middle of the day is worse for people who are teleworking. And I bet you have more of those in your neighborhood now than you did 4 years ago. So I just want to add these data points. Hopefully it's not too self-absorbed and it applies to other people. And I thank your committee for your work. And perhaps if not, all of this should go forward. You guys can push B2 forward.
Thank you, Nancy. David?
Thank you. Dave Diefender, River City resident. I just wanted to say, again, this is another tough issue. I just disagree with the fact of you telling me I can't operate my lawnmower that I've paid $700 for. It takes me 15 minutes to cut my lawn. Now, the noise that I find offensive is when the gas-powered leaf blowers, they blow them for an hour. Well, they'll blow leaves in the wintertime, or they'll cut the grass, and you have a couple blades of grass on the sidewalk, and they'll go up and back and forth, back and forth. So they blow out a lot of toxins. So I have an article real quick here it's from the Washington Times, and I'll just read you the paragraph here. Washington Times, and it's talking about the California Air Resources Board. So take this as you never know what's actually true or not true. So we talked about the emissions, and there's no question the emissions on a lawnmower are much worse than a car. It doesn't have a catalytic converter. So it says that if you operate a leaf blower for 1 hour, the State Board of California equates that to 1,100 miles of driving a car. If you operate a lawnmower for 1 hour, it's about 300 miles for a car. Whether this is true or not true, it's in the Washington Times. So it takes me 15 minutes to cut my lawn. That's 75 miles of driving. So just something maybe to put that in perspective. But I agree with trying to cut down the noise, trying to solve the environmental problems, but I just disagree with mandating that a resident can't cut their lawn with the mower that they've purchased. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. That report, would you either give Ann a hard copy or send her a link to that for our records? Thank you very much. So coming back to this table, did you want to reiterate any of your questions to seek?
No, I
I'm
would.
not sure anybody's prepared to answer the question.
Right, because I have particular concerns about small businesses. A 1 or 2 person shop. We had those considerations when it was our business community, and I have a hard time understanding why we would treat one class of businesses differently from others. So maybe we do, or maybe we don't have statistics on how many business licenses we have out there for those kinds of operations. But most importantly to me is the first blush cost of $250,000. And to me, this is a prime example of where we could utilize Engagement HQ, Reach Out Rehoboth, to validate when you use terminology like this is a predominant issue, you could actually determine if it is or it isn't. So I'm not in favor of pushing it forward only because to me it doesn't have enough meat to it to warrant that.
Well, that's what I'd like to hear from the rest of the commissioners, the status of, do we put this on another agenda or do we let it pass? Anybody else want to contribute?
Two things of concern to me is cost. That's $250,000. We new to the budget to try to figure out where that would come from in the next season, especially with the dates that are outlined here. The other thing is enforcement. We have had challenges with enforcement. We're diligently working on that, but to add something else to enforce would be, I think, problematic. And here we already say the city already has a limit of 74 decibel for gas-powered lawn and garden equipment, but gasoline-powered lawn and garden equipment can produce up to 100 decibels. So I don't know if we're even looking at that, if that's on the radar to enforce now or not. And, you know, I guess this is an insult to injury, what, folks are concerned about leaf blowers, but my favorite subject are power washers. That's kind of the introduction to spring in Rehoboth, is to hear the power washers running for hours and hours as people do their decks and sidewalks and sides of their houses and roofs and everything. We don't address that here. So, unintended consequences of other things that happen to fall into that same noise-producing or pollution-producing. So I think we're just not ready to move forward on this because there's other priorities that we should be addressing.
We could move forward on banning the use of non-temporary electric generators that are powered by gasoline engines with just a simple checkbox on the foundation inspection. Is your electric power, temporary power, set up?
Well, Jay, I think you're onto something there because I think that even has more impact
By far.
for eliminating a gasoline engine that can run up to 10 hours, 8 or 10 hours a day.
Days and days.
But did I miss it? That wasn't covered in this recommendation, was it?
No, but
Okay.
that's a rationale that I'm going to use.
Got it.
That I'm not ready for this to go forward. But I am interested in reducing gas-powered emissions in Rehoboth Beach, and that's where I think Jay's idea is an excellent idea. But again, I'm just not ready to move forward with this and do the banning, especially as I said earlier, that if we pass it, I believe the citizen has to also mirror all the rules. And that's a very expensive proposition. And maybe we want to do it a little bit at a time into the future, and that's for the decision of the city manager. Maybe we switch to electric blowers only 1 year.
Are they that much quieter?
Say that again?
Are the electric blowers quieter? I mean, I think they're a little quieter, but they're still kind of noisy.
Just from personal experience, the neighbors across the street from me replaced all electric, and sitting on my front porch, it's still the same noise.
Yeah.
Same volume of noise. I can hear
May
it just as
even be a
clearly.
higher
Yeah,
frequency.
I mean, I'm
than-
sure they're quieter, but I don't think they're appreciably quieter.
But they don't put out CO2.
I think it would be interesting to know what the challenges are in Lewis of whatever level of restrictions they have, whether or not they are or are not enforcing. And how are they doing that? Lewis is a big territory.
Well, we can do some follow-up with them, but it would not be to come back and report so
No.
that we can determine whether to continue this or not. I think we make a decision today. I'm not hearing any sorry, Ed. Thank your group for all the work that they did. But you can articulate that the commission and some of the public don't seem to be ready. And I know you got some negative communications back in February, March from the Hannahs and some others. But I want to appreciate Ed or Tim, do you have anything you want to say? Are you amenable with taking a pass on this?
Yeah, I don't believe we could do this unless the city does it first and makes an example. And before we ask residents and the businesses to do it. So it seems to me that we don't even have the budget to implement it this year if we have to replace equipment. So, but I do agree. I think we all know the CDP says that it's an issue, climate change. We all agree with those issues, but this may be a phased-in approach, may be better.
Well, do you want to suggest that the city manager considers budgeting for this for the next budget cycle?
No. No, I don't. But I do think it needs to be discussed further, and I think it's I think as it was brought up earlier, maybe some more concrete examples. For instance, we just heard about noise today, more so than maybe the environmental issue. There was a noise issue. So I just think we need to be a little more determined as to what the recourse is.
Right.
I would like to say that I'm sympathetic to the woman describing the noise issues at her home, and that's in my neighborhood is served by principally one lawn service that basically cuts about half the houses on our street. So it's like when they're there, it's loud, and it's loud for a long time because they're doing different properties and so forth. But the idea that if they have lawn equipment that is unduly loud and it may be not maintained or whatever, I mean, I would suggest, to the extent that you can get these little decibel meters for your phone, and it would just be interesting just to get like a reading to see what that is, and if it's well above what our noise ordinance dictates. I mean, that's an avenue to approach, I guess. But, and I think it would be helpful to us to know, kind of what you're experiencing and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Ed, we'll give you the last word, I'm afraid. Anything you want to say, but again, want to thank your committee.
Nope, heard loud and clear, and we'll report back to the committee.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go on to the next item of new business, which is discuss establishing a backflow prevention program. And there's two embedded support documents in there, and I guess this is going to be led by Public Works Supervisor Kevin Williams.
And if I could get the screens, please. Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. This is a topic that we're listing as new business. It's really, really, really old business. Some of you may recall back in 2018, 2019, this had started to rear its head. We anticipated this coming. COVID hit, it kind of got put on the back burner. They took another year to Delaware took another year to actually enact the legislation. So it took a nice pause during COVID, but now it's coming back to us. So there's a recent Delaware Office of Drinking Water regulation that requires backflow prevention on virtually everything that's connected to the public water supply. And it's a building code requirement already. So it's happening, it's been happening, but there's a new requirement to now test, document, and report as a utility that these backflow prevention devices are there and working. So just to give a little background, Delaware Rural Water contracted with HydroCorp, a national organization, to do a lot of the work for the municipalities in Delaware. And this is a little video that they put together to just kind of get everybody's head back in the game on what backflow prevention is and who's required to do it and the like. So I'd like to start with just kind of showing everybody the video. It's about a 3-minute clip, so it doesn't take too long.
Water normally flows in one direction, from the
And
water
you can probably
distribution
adjust that
source
up a
to the
little
tap, like our kitchen sink. But under certain conditions, water can actually flow backwards. This is known as backflow. Backflow can and does occur as a result of unplanned changes in the pressure of a water system, which can be caused by a water main break, fire hydrant use, or interior back pressure. Your local water provider is making improvements to protect the safety of drinking water. Here's why. Delaware's Department of Health Code 4455 requires specific backflow prevention devices to control hazards associated with the drinking water plumbing. Recently adopted in February 2021, the Department of Health Code 4462 requires all public water systems to develop a comprehensive cross-connection control program, also called a CCC program. Delaware water providers are responsible for ensuring water that is safe for everyone to drink, which is the ultimate goal of these regulations. Your local public water supply system's CCC program will consist of public awareness efforts, building owner notifications, backflow preventer test tracking, inspections when necessary, potential corrective action, record keeping, and achieving regulatory compliance. Water customers with known backflow preventer assemblies at their facilities can expect to receive notification to hire a certified backflow preventer tester for the mandatory annual testing of their backflow preventer or preventers. Test records are required to be submitted via a secure website maintained by the public water system. Facilities where no backflow preventer assemblies are on record may receive notification to hire a certified CCC surveyor or inspector to assess on-site potable water plumbing for appropriate backflow prevention. Backflow preventer testers and cross-connection surveyors must hold current certifications issued by the ASSE, the American Society of Sanitary Engineers. These notifications will also include information on where to locate appropriate approved testers and surveyors. If corrective action is required, it is the responsibility of the building owner to complete those actions on or prior to the compliance date. Potential corrective actions could be repairing a backflow preventer assembly after a failed test, or installing a new backflow preventer assembly as determined by an ASSE certified surveyor. Remember, we are all directly connected to the local public water system. And together, we can work to keep your drinking water safe from the hazards of backflow and cross connections.
So as Phil mentioned, I mean, the intent behind the whole program is to protect our public drinking water supply. And we don't want a bad actor out there that's not in compliance being able to contaminate neighbors and or the entire drinking water supply. So as I said, these things have been required for quite some time now. But as with a lot of things, it gets the building inspectors check, when they're building the new house, it's all there. But there's never any follow-up with, does it continue to function or is it working? Or the shade tree plumber that comes in and installs your irrigation system for half price doesn't put one in. But there's no mechanism at this time to go around and make sure that those things are still working and compliant. So that was the genesis of all this and kind of a lot of the rationale for implementing the new law. If you recall, back in 2019, we got a grant from Rural Water. Or I guess the grant was from Office of Drinking Water. We partnered with Rural Water, and we did an inspection and assessment of all the city-owned facilities. So knowing that this was coming, we started and implemented it on the city. So we've been doing this for city properties, since 2020, basically. So for a couple of years already. The new part about the inspection and reporting in this mechanism, they designate two categories: low hazard versus high hazard. So if you're a residential homeowner and just your house, you don't have an irrigation system, you don't have fire protection, those kind of things, you're deemed a low hazard, and you have a certain level of protection that you're required to maintain. If you have an irrigation system or fire protection system, or you're more of an industrial or commercial kind of enterprise where you have a higher level of hazard, then they categorize you as high hazard. An example of a low would be, if you have a hose that's stuck into your sink and it sucks back in like soapy water. So you may have a little indigestion or some other minor things happen to you, as opposed to if you've got it stuck out in your lawn in a puddle of grass that you've just put fertilizer on, and now you're sucking in fertilizer or pesticides, something like that. Somebody could get seriously ill, perhaps even die. So that's kind of the differentiation in the grouping between a low hazard and a high hazard. Some of the things that you probably have seen at your own house, on the outdoor spigot, this little device on the top of the spigot is a backflow preventer. So you should probably be seeing these on all of your homes now. It also comes in a threaded, you can screw into the outside of the outgoing pipe on your spigot. Inside your house now, the big kitchen sinks now, all that have even the extendable spigots, they all have to have the retractable weight on them now, so they self-retract, so that less chance of it just kind of hanging down in the dishwater, to get sucked back in the event of a reverse pressurization. Same with down here, the little thing for your dishwasher that creates an air gap for your dishwasher if you have a problem. So I know you're seeing these already at your homes, but now the next grouping is this one out in your backyard or out on the side of your house for your irrigation system. And I know a lot of folks have the irrigation system, so it's going to impact quite a few folks. But that's what it looks like. And there's a picture on the left, and then there's a guy, coming out to test that system. The first thing, if you'll recall back to this slide, it talks about the kind of the process. A lot of this process is going to be fairly transparent to the city and the city staff because, like I said, Rural Water has partnered with HydroCorp, and they have set up most of the utilities programs such that they're going to do all of this record keeping and notifications for the cities, for the municipalities, under our kind of supervision. So you'll see in the draft plan that you've been provided, it shows all these different notifications letters that they're going to prepare and send out for the folks that have come up on the annual requirement to do their inspection. But it all starts, with this public awareness issue. And I'll just show you, we've put together kind of some content to put out on our website to help with this public notification. So it's got things like the regulation itself that's driving it. Once we do an ordinance, we'll have a link to the ordinance, frequently asked questions. So all these kind of things that will help kind of just the general education. And for those of us that just have a low hazard, so if you don't have irrigation or fire protection or things like that, then all we have to do to make sure you're compliant is to make sure we're providing this public information, whether it's through a note or a flyer in a utility bill or having this on our website. That kind of meets it because there is a backflow device on all of our meters. So you get some general protection, at each of the meters. And the city will be responsible for testing and replacing those as they go bad over a period of time. But the first part, obviously, is that outreach. Oops, sorry. So the big impact to the homeowners is that the onus for that inspection and the report is on the homeowner. We will track it, but it's on the homeowner or property owner to do that inspection or get somebody to do that inspection and report it. So the program runs off of that fee. So there's a fee associated with the plumber coming out and doing the inspection. So you're going to call Joe Plumber. He's going to come out. He's going to do the test, do the inspection, and report it to us, to the city. And in that will be the fee that covers the management fee for the HydroCorp folks to maintain the data, send out the letters, those kind of things. On the order of probably $100 a year for the property owner to have that inspection done and report the results.
Annual inspection?
Annual inspection and report. Mm-hmm. I will reiterate, it's not us dreaming this up. Our regulatory society has decided.
Buried the lead.
So that's really the impact to the homeowners is now they have to get this thing inspected and report it to us, and then we report it to the Office of Drinking Water.
And when does this start?
February 2024.
This coming February?
Correct, right. So I'll just give you what our thoughts on the next step is. One, you've got kind of the plan. You can read through that. If you have any suggestions for that, we'd be happy to take them. But the ordinance is kind of the next step. So you've got the draft ordinance. Our intent would be that you'd have this approved, by the end of September so that we can start targeting our customers in that October bill with this requirement that's going to happen about 4 or 5 months after that. And then starting in January, February-ish, then we'll start notifying individual homeowners or customers that you have a backflow prevention device that needs to be tested and inspected. And then we'll start with the whole notification, discussion, another notification, more discussion, another notification, more discussion, and then we cut the water off. So there's going to be a lot of kind of learning as we go through with these various notifications to make sure that the homeowners are now doing what they're required to do with respect to documenting that their backflow prevention devices are working.
Great. You said the cross-connection control is already a city code.
Correct. The plumbing code requires the
Plumbing
devices
required.
already. It's really now inspecting existing devices and the reporting of them.
For every single residential property?
If they're deemed a high hazard. So basically, if they have an irrigation system or they have a fire protection system.
So that's the subset of residents. You have to have both of those or one or the other.
One or the other. Or they could have something else. They could have maybe an irrigation well that we'd have to check and make sure didn't get tied to the city system. But the big two are the irrigation and fire protection systems.
You keep referring to residential. Is this only residential?
No,
or
I'm
commercial?
sorry. It's everybody. I should say property owner.
Okay.
Right, because really the commercials have, if you go down in our basement, you see the backflow prevention devices on City Hall. I mean, they're huge and costly. But the resident, the typical ones you're going to see at a residence are, you saw on the presentation, pretty small and intrusive.
Backflow in the meters are not sufficient or not?
That's correct, for the high hazards. They're deemed sufficient for the low hazard categories.
And do swimming pools or spas or anything fall into high hazard?
It's my understanding swimming pools do. I don't know about spas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be
that
another-
theory would probably be the same, yeah.
How long how's that been in the plumbing code?
I don't know, but I'm sure we can find that out, yeah. I know it's been a while.
Okay. So if a person has all of the backflow preventers on their hydrants, they don't have an irrigation system, and when did the meter start having backflow preventers on them?
The ones that we've done ever since I've been here have had them.
Okay, so all the
Integral to
electronic.
the meter, right.
I got you. Okay, thanks.
So I just want to simplify this for me. So every resident that has a sprinkler system will be high hazard.
Correct.
And in the winter, when many people are not here, they need to call a plumber to get them to do an inspection.
Not necessarily in the winter, right?
Oh.
It'll be while they're here, so they can probably do it in April, they'd be okay. But at their annual anniversary, they'll get the letter from us / HydroCorp telling them, hey, your annual inspection is due.
And they self-report in the first place about sprinklers and fire protection and those sorts of features?
So our water department has kind of prepared that list, so we're at about the 95% because they're out there checking meters almost, once a month or so, quarterly. So we know for the most part who has irrigation systems, who has fire protection systems, what restaurants have, those kind of things. So we have a really good, I'll say 95% solution on who has the requirement to have one, so.
And so do we actually know what % of people this is going to impact at some point?
We probably have that data. I don't know it right now,
Okay.
but I know Robert probably does, yeah. The numbers.
Did I miss something, or is this the first time we're hearing about this today? In this.
First time since 2019, probably.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. Just wondered if I had dozed off for a couple of years.
No, we're just getting, we're 6 months out now, so we're trying to get our ducks lined up.
Could we reverse engineer this in that if we know who the residents are, or the properties that require this, do we have a group that could go in and check it and we just add that to the water bill rather than relying on them hiring plumbers?
Yes. That would involve, additional resources to do that, so.
Or could we subcontract it to one
Yeah, I just thought
or a
that'd be more
couple
efficient.
of
Yeah.
companies?
I don't know that would be any more efficient than
Okay.
having HydroCorp do it, to be honest with you, so.
Isn't that the system we're using currently to inspect for the lead connectors?
We're trying to do that ourselves because that involves getting into the homes.
Right.
So that's I would say, a subtle difference in that we're really not sure we want to have contractors given access to inside homes. So.
One other, I don't know if you can answer this, but a concern or red flag for me was in the material that were presented here, the actual draft, it says, line 43, 44, it says, city manager deems determination water service a consuming unit necessarily to prevent or limit contamination of the public water system. In such cases, water service shall be restored as soon as the city of Rehoboth Beach and the Delaware Department of Health and Social Service determine the potential contamination is eliminated. So bringing in Health and Human Services from Delaware, do you know, how does that happen? Has that been figured out yet? I mean, to try to get somebody from the state to respond along with the city to turn the water back on?
I think in our case, Commissioner, I don't think it would get to that level because we really don't have any like industrial complexes here. I think that's probably geared more toward a real health hazard with respect to a corrosive or something.
That's not what the code reads.
It's not clear enough in there.
I'm just curious as to,
I don't think if we don't put it in there, and then we are, health and social service takes precedent jurisdiction over something, then there would be a conflict. I think that is there for the, like what Kevin said, the much larger events that we don't or wouldn't control. Could you see, for instance, for them to come in and shut down our water utility if there was some type of contamination? Would need authorization to turn back on?
Oh, if it contaminated our system, yes, they would have to release us to go back, open back up. Yeah.
again,
More clarity.
Sorry in the weeds here, but it just says, water service to a consuming unit. We define consuming unit as any premises supplied by or in any manner connected to the public water system. Doesn't talk about size or whatever. Again, to look at this, but I just don't know how you do that. So bringing the state agency in is a question to me.
Okay, sure.
Very good. Any questions by the commissioners? Members of the public? Come ahead, Walter.
Walter Brittingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. First of all, very complete documentation offered. I read through the whole thing. I was kind of surprised by the dates, et cetera. And now it pops up, no sarcasm here, that it's an annual inspection. This is essentially a check valve that goes into the system. And then I know a person that had a county water meter fail, and when they came back, they cut the water off. They had to get a plumber, and it was outside that they had to put outside of the house in the yard that they had to put a backflow preventer, and their bill ended up at $1,500. No disrespect, but plumbers don't show up for less than $95 today. So you have a fair expense, and I trust that as you go around and you're examining the water valves today in accordance with the lead test, I would think that we would be highly advising customers right now the best way we could, lines in the sand and or your new proposed methodology of communicating with the public. But there's a timely manner to do this, and people, if they're going to do any work, need to be doing it right after Labor Day so that they're not doing it next spring when they're trying to open up. And if a person doesn't have room under their house or in their basement or whatever, do they get into outside pits? And I think the information that you have sent out here is very complete. I take you down to the fact that if some people are arbitrary and capricious and think they're going to beat this, they're not. And the very last pages of it says that down around page 125, around that area, that it even gives the city manager the right to go for a warrant to go into your house and find it. But this is something serious, and it's not just a couple $100. Is there another meter? Can you have it outside? Can it be a separate meter pit, a bigger meter pit? Can it go in a meter pit? So if we don't know where it can go, and a plumber shows up with two people, if they have to put a meter pit in or something, it can be thousands of dollars. You take most fire alarm systems have at least a 4-inch feeder pipe, and I've seen those backflow preventers. It can slow up getting a plumber getting a job done for you. So I would encourage the city, since you have a mandate from the state and that you have to do it, to try to do it as right and as early as possible to let people know to budget for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Anybody else? Nope, nope. Thank you very much, Kevin. So I think I heard you say we should put this on the September regular meeting for consideration of the ordinance. Oh.
It is effective immediately upon signing.
Yeah, that would be my desire. If you, by September, we get it, and we'll start sending notifications out.
Okay,
initially,
okay.
yeah.
'Cause I think we're satisfied with this introduction to it, that we don't need to put it on the August workshop meeting. Thank you very much. All righty, and with that, we move on to commissioner announcements and comments. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share? If not, we'll move on to review future meeting dates. At 2 o'clock today, there is a special meeting. The only topic of interest is a executive session where no action is expected to be taken. Following that, Friday, July 21st, starting at 2 o'clock, is our Board of Commissioners regular meeting, in which we have public hearings, for parking, public hearing for 20663 Coastal Highway, I believe. And so we will have a busy dance card at that meeting. Any citizen comment, anything, Walter? Nope. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 12:26 p.m. Thank you very much.